What is going on, everybody? We're doing take two because we just started discussing this. I have not had my caffeine yet, and I'm aware I did not hit the go live button at all. We were just like blasting right into it. We probably went for 7 minutes or so, just not aware. And I'm looking up, going, "Shit! Oh." But
it's all good.
We'll kind of go back for whoever's just tuning in now, because I just completely bungled that. It's guys, I've been up since probably like, I don't know, 8 o'clock this morning. I am like, it's yesterday was absolutely fucking horrible. And I was like, okay, from here on out, Friday the 13th, I'm calling out or quitting my job. I'm fucking over this shit.
I saw some tweets from you earlier. I thought,
it started on the 12th. I gotta tell this story because it's just I can't make this up. I mean, first thing smoking, I'm in there, I'm moving around my photo lab. I get to the counter, I look at this guy, I say, "Can I help you?" He looks at me, he goes, "Do you work here?"
No. I don't.
I'm not kidding. I'm giving him that look like,
where do you think I work?
No, but don't be telling anybody. Shit, I don't think they figured out I'm not supposed to fucking be here. Somehow I wound up on the payroll. It's fucking crazy. Halloween costume, asshole. I'm trying it on early. But like it was kind of like just the normal stupidity you'd run into. And then toward the end of the night, there's this guy. He's like, "Hey, y'all know there's like no moon right now, right?" I'm looking over at my coworker like, what is going on here? And I'm looking around for hidden cameras. I'm like, am I being punked? And he's like,
kidding,
19 flights have been grounded. Do you think we can survive without a moon? I'm like, this is the most non sequitur thing I've ever heard. I'm like, it has to be something in the water. No shit. I looked at my phone. I'm like, I can't find any evidence of flights being grounded. Of course, if you're going to Israel, your flight's probably getting canceled.
Yes.
That just goes without saying. And I don't think this guy understands phases of the moon. I'm like, oh man. I get to work yesterday. I'm not kidding you. 4 people asking me if I work there. I'm standing behind a freaking counter ringing people up. I'm like,
wow.
Jesus Christ, dude. And these people are like, why don't you have self-checkouts? I'm like, dude, you can't even work the pin pad. What do you think's going to go on there? Oh my gosh. I mean, just insanity. By the end of the night, my nerves were so frayed. I was like, there ain't enough weed in the world, bro. There ain't enough weed. There ain't enough mead. I would literally just smoke and drink myself to death to have to cope with this shit.
Working with the public, always fun.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, lowest common denominator is getting... I'm like, wow. And there was such an emphasis on me being, because I have so much potential and I have to live up to it. I should really scream at my parents for how much this pains me. But anyway, not talking about that. Let's talk about something that's really cool. Something that's really awesome for a change.
Awesome. I agree.
Bhakashal spell book is out. The link is in the description below. If you're watching this right now, I'm encouraging every one of you to drop into that link. If you can't buy it right now, bookmark that son of a bitch. Go back and buy it when you get paid. If you could buy it now, buy it now. I do have one question before we kick things off, because this concerns the book itself. I've seen the premium hardcover goes for like $80.
Yeah,
and I'm looking at that going, but I gotta know. Like I bought hardcover from Lulu, but what exactly is a premium hardcover?
So when I was setting up which versions would be available, you can set up whatever you like. I looked to see what the full options were, and the full option premium hardcover. The only difference between that, I think the best deal is the regular hardcover, to be honest with you, for the price. But the premium hardcover has a slipcase with some writing and stuff on it, and it has a high quality color as opposed to standard color. So if you're an art person and you want your thing to pop that way, sure. But otherwise,
that's definitely me.
Yeah, well, fair enough. That's why I made it off.
I'm not gonna lie though. I would probably buy the paperback as a beater. You
Yeah.
know, that way I could pass it around the table. And then of course, you know, I also have this. So this is great for mobile games because I have a tablet I
Yeah.
can put it on, and then that nice hardcover, I would have that and just kind of be like staring at it the whole time.
Yeah, personally, I'll probably have a soft cover for the game as well, and a hardcover for home. Yeah.
And
Although
we
it's
were
nice to have a PDF because you can search it and it's all bookmarked and stuff like that.
that is true.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is extremely searchable. I found that out like my first night of just messing with it.
Yeah.
And
Well, I took the time to bookmark it just because the documents get so big it can be even hard for me to find stuff. So I'm like,
no doubt, 232 pages in the PDF alone, which
right.
is not it's not that big, but for a book that contains spells and their variants, that's a lot of spells. My goodness, how long did
Yeah.
it take you to come up with this many spells?
Oh, it's weird. I work in bursts, so it can I can be thinking about stuff that I'll sit down and actually do it. So the actual writing of them, I don't know, over the course of 8 months, I guess, back and forth doing other things. Yeah, I work in these sort of super creative bursts and then I stop for a period of time. So it's the way the brain goes. So yeah,
And I was commenting on this piece of art here.
yes,
This
it's
this
Don
looks
Mates.
like I said, my first thought when I first saw it was Advanced D&D first edition, definitely. And of course, this looks like I'm serious. Like this looks like the kind of art I would have seen in the backs of my comic books because I was absolutely forbidden to play D&D at all back in the early to mid '90s,
Right.
and didn't get into it until probably about mid to late '90s. This looks like the type of art I would have seen in those comic books where the characters don't really have names; they're just presented, and then
Yeah.
you're looking at it going, I could play that character, or oh, I got ideas for that. Like it really
Yeah.
stirred the imagination, and it's not exactly safe. I mean, you see this wizard here. He's got dragons around him. He's got creatures around him. It looks like they're either coming after him or they're following him, and you're not really sure
Yeah.
which. It could go either way.
I got to stat those things too. Can't forget.
So,
Right.
it,
I hate when you see something in the cover of a book, but you can't do it. That's what always bothered me about the and recall the chaotic picture in the Dungeon Master's Guide, first edition Dungeon Master's Guide. It's one of the best pieces of fantasy art ever, based on a real world location and stuff. But the dude on the horse is doing something you can't do in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. You can't cast spells like that from riding on the back of a horse. It's like, why? Why?
right?
How many players looked at that and said, "I want to do that," but you can't do that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Even in Dragonlance, Raceland was on a horse. I think in the Legends trilogy, he was actually on a horse, but he had to get off the horse to cast any spells at all. I was
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, why? Would he spook the horse? I don't get it. I really don't. But this is pretty amazing stuff. I mean, you got this creature with four. This one looks like he's doing magic of his own.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like some sort of spell is being cast, right? So,
And this looks like his kid over here. Like, yep, I learned from Daddy. I don't have the other two arms yet. Won't till puberty, but I'm still learning.
they'll grow it eventually.
Yeah, he'll grow into that, I think. And this guy over here, it looks to me like he's actually summoning a dragon.
Well, the actual original piece is called the Demon of the Ring.
Oh,
So that thing's coming out of the ring, as far as I understand it. That was the
I can see. I'm seeing it now.
yeah.
And you licensed this piece for the cover.
Yeah, the author was great about it. I contacted him. He's like, "Yep, I guess you license pieces of art for a period of time." So he licensed this out for I think some science or fantasy novel in the 70s or something like that. It came out, and then eventually the copyright expires and it's available again.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's there's lots of classic fantasy artists still kicking around and still licensing their work. So it's something to think about, right?
And it's cheap. You said I think you mentioned it was
Well, it's
cheaper
not
than
cheap, but it's cheaper
art.
than original art. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Wow. And so
Yeah,
you've got Sears, Bestials, Warlocks, Phantasmus. And for this particular setting, but you released the spell book first because you could just kind of plug and play with
Yeah,
the
the spells are entirely compatible with first edition plus any of the earlier editions of D&D. You can pretty easily tweak what you need to tweak. So you'll recognize the stat blocks for them. They're standard language and stuff. So if you played old school games at all, you'll be able to just use the spells as is, basically. There's a couple of places where there are differences, but they won't be visible to somebody if they're playing it. So just an easy example is one of the things about first edition that was always challenging at our table was that the stat bonuses were clustered at the top end, right? So if you had an 18, 17, 16, or 15, you get bonuses, otherwise you got nothing. And because of that, people tended to weight up their stats and stuff like that in order to do it. So I redistributed the stat bonuses a little bit. So anytime in a spell it says something like you get to cast for 3 to 4 rounds plus your stat bonus or something like that, it might be a little off. If you're running first edition AD&D, the bonuses will be slightly different, but it doesn't really matter to gameplay that much, so it's not really notable. Other than that, it's all as is.
Kind of going back to the question of licensing.
Yeah.
Once the license expires on this, would you have to remove that and replace it from your book?
No, I can only publish within I think it's a 5-year license. So anything I publish in the 5-year span is covered. Once it's out, it's out. That's fine. Now, at year 6, if I published another piece of the project with that art and I didn't pay for renewal of the license, then I'd be in copyright violation on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And wow, I mean, good grief, so many spells, just crazy. 9th level spells. I love this one. This one fell into 9th level imprisonment. Like, geez. Okay,
that's the first edition spell, right?
Yeah.
Anything? Yeah.
And that sounds like you really have to know your stuff, and this would actually hold. This wouldn't be just like the cage drops down and then they're like, no, I'll just pick this up and move it over here.
Oh, no, I believe it's something a little more potent than that.
It looks to me like tree roots would just start springing up and forming a cage, and you'd be like, nah, we ain't moving, bro. You think you're gonna burn it? You're just gonna
not happening.
Smoke inhalation. And I'm just scrolling and scrolling here. Now we're getting to the descriptions, and I gotta say I love this piece. This is beautiful.
Yeah, all the art in here is public domain stuff that I basically spent a considerable portion of time trolling the internet for, and a lot of it is a lot of woodcuts, a lot of prints, and a lot of stuff from illuminated stuff from books and stuff like that. There's a ton of material out there. The challenge for me is that I wanted to get away from your sort of standard medieval style D&D vibe, because that's not what I'm doing with the setting. So that made it a little harder for me to find things that didn't, I don't want any armored knights, because that's not the thing I'm doing. So that took a lot of the stuff that otherwise would be great. I found stuff that that'd be great for a standard D&D setting, but that's not quite what I'm looking for. So it took a while, but I'm happy with what I got. But it's a thing, right? So.
Can you tell us anything about the setting itself?
Sure. I sort of sat down, and what I was shooting for was essentially Jack Vance's sort of setting. I don't think D&D does a really great job at emulating Vance, so this is my shot. But also set a little earlier. Vance, his setting is set up at sort of the end of things when everything's about to wrap up for humanity, and most of the magic's been forgotten, and most of the stuff isn't sort of current anymore. It's all whoever remembers it and stuff like that. So what I did was sort of dialed it back a few hundred years to a period of time when they were thriving and there was lots of new magic being created and lots of spells and stuff. And that's what I wanted to set it for. So it's like that. The environment's tropical, marshland, swampland setting, stuff like that. But this is built into the game mechanics in different ways. So for example, armor. Nobody runs around in full plate armor, because it's like 45 degrees and you'll die of heat prostration, right? So there's exhaustion rules in the game for what happens if you wear heavy armor, stuff like that. So so what that means is, in combat, no one's running around, there aren't that many people running around with armor class 2 or armor class 3 or stuff like that, which means a lot more people die in combat. It's a much more violent and deadly setting as a result of that. But the general level of protection for armors I also redid the armor tables a little bit to reflect that, so you'd know what you were getting. So some people are running around in hoplite armor, some people are running around in gladiator, samnite armor, and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's the sort of setting background. And then otherwise, it's set in a city. There's also some stuff surrounding the city. I have kind of slums area outside of it that's getting populated as well. And there's a marshland with villages in it. But the main setting's a city, and essentially it came about because I spent a couple of months researching existing fantasy cities that were around different settings because I was trying to find a setting that I wanted. I wanted to do a city thing. I wanted to do something urban because I'd done so many. I spent years and years doing sort of standard dungeon crawls, which were super fun, but I wanted something different. And I hit the problem I think a lot of people hit. It's like I like all these, but they're not what I want. So I just made what I wanted. Right? It was that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can talk about this all day, but that's the sort of basics of it. I think my goal was also to make. I wanted to change certain things about the way the classes work. Like in first edition, the wizard is the sort of nebbish guy. He's thin. He's not very strong. He's cowering behind everybody all the time, and then he becomes high level and quite powerful. But the process, that's what the pointy hat was. It was sort of the guy with your machine gun that has to hide behind you kind of thing. And I was like, I want a setting where first level magic is walk around and you get out of the way.
Yeah.
And so to do that, this was the spells were part of it. I wanted to sort of expand the spell selection and make it a little more variable too, because I don't know about you, but if you run first edition games, you tend to find that everybody takes the same spells and does the same stuff because they optimize it, right? Whatever. Yeah. So part of the reason I gave you all those tables is that you get to randomize it. So when you create a magic user character in this game, your referee rolls up your patron and your patron's spells, and those are the ones you get offered. Now you can choose somewhat between them, but that's your spell list for purposes of your free level up spell. It's not just it's not like not like other people tend to do it in first edition, which you either just pick it and get the player to say what they want or whatever the case might be. So spells you find on scrolls all randomized. So everything I randomize, like this is a different streaming topic, but I randomize almost everything I do as a referee, and it fundamentally changes the nature of play. Because so much of what you do is based on your biases, preconceptions, and stuff like that. So you tend to give this, you default to the same stuff a lot. I noticed that this is one of the advantages of playing for decades, right? You start noticing your patterns, or your players reflect them back to you and say, well, you do this, or this is your tell for that, right? So you start learning these sorts of things. And that's what I sort of noticed about, that was part of the design philosophy behind the game and behind spells particularly, was I want you to not have a clue what spells that an enemy warlock has when you look at them, as opposed to going, well, I know they've got this, 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 and this, right? No, you don't. That makes for a very different kind of game. So
that is something very true that my late ass is very aware of. I was just talking the other day with people, and I was saying that one of the issues I think the younger people have, the newbies, with the newest editions of the games we do not speak of, is not only do they favor specific builds and they'll optimize. So it's like everybody takes Magic Missile because you take Magic Missile because it's reliable, whereas everything else requires dice rolls. But they tend to think in very stratified terms about their gaming experience. So I play this game and I play that game, and I only play those games along that specific progression of books. Right, so when they run into something they've never seen before, they're like, I guess I need to make a new book. I need to make a new set of rules. I need to make a whole new set of consequences because there's no answers. There's no answers anywhere. Oh my god! And
well, that's all this book is. Like this book right here. It's literally nothing but ways to do Magic Missile, and like going through it. Some of it is like supremely gross. Like there's stuff in there I can't really unsee. But I was kind of like, how many ways can you do Magic Missile? Well, the Flame Princess answered it for me. I was like, whoa, okay.
And in conversation, what I'm always saying is that I'm basically gaming holistic. I've been doing this for decades, and I rather than play any one specific game, because back in the before 4 time when there was no internet. You played whatever you had. Anything you get your greasy little hands on, you played it.
Yeah.
So I played everything and anything from Marvel superheroes to Gamma World to Paranoia. And everything you play becomes informative because every game has an answer to some question, to some problem in some other game you play.
Yeah. Wistmore asked, was that Michael Whelan's art?
No, it's Don Mates. I put that up in the chat.
Cool. And Child of Ash, will there ever be a decentralized digital D&D version that's worth the damn? It could even be done in an existing game like Roblox. Actually, you know what? There are plenty of them, and honestly, a lot of these retro clones that are out there, they do a really great job because D&D itself, especially with most of it going into Creative Commons, especially with the erroneous addition of Strahd, they can't touch it now. Yeah, they put that in Creative Commons, so as long as you attribute them,
even
for the creation, you can actually use it. But yeah, D&D itself, aside from the trademarks, it's pretty decentralized now. Like anybody can just open source make a clone, and we've got clones like Basic Fantasy, White Box FMAG, Delving Deeper, Osric, for Golden Glory.
There's more than 100 retro clones, and that was like as of 5 years ago. So I'm sure there's more than
Wizard
that.
Wizardry, Old School Essentials. It's all out there. You can just take your pick. It's just D&D with the serial numbers filed off. It's just which version of D&D do you want to play?
I mean, you can even find a halfway decent official digital D&D. I'm going to pull out something old that some of us are going to go, oh, I remember that. Neverwinter Nights. The first Neverwinter Nights. There is still, to this day, a vigorous modding community using its tools to make their own adventures. And people are really into it, even though it's third. If you're into third, that's fine. If you're not into third, maybe it's not your thing. But the point is that they're taking the tools that were given them because it's their property, and they're making adventures for it still. So
there's a huge face rip community too, right? For Marvel superheroes, it's just, like you can get everything online. It's all free, right?
This is something else that I was commenting on Patty's show, or his evening draw stream. Was the idea that this hobby, this weird hobby of ours, has never been corporate product, even though it has corporations in it. It has always been homemade artisanal. Everybody makes stuff themselves, and what we value collectively or colloquially as a community, in the broadest sense of we are a community. It's like we're a bunch of decentralized tribes, but what we value is effort. The people who show effort and enthusiasm, and it's like, look at this stupid thing I made, isn't it cool? And it's like, that does look pretty cool.
There was an interesting,
what we value.
There was an interesting comment on Twitter I saw a little while back about this, where they were saying that they were looking at some new games and saying it's really disappointing when the layout or the presentation isn't as sort of cutting edge and cool as it can be. And I don't even want to look at a game that doesn't have top notch, really challengingly good layout. And I'm thinking, wow, that's ridiculous. I've played D&D for almost 40 years using a version that had, not necessarily the best layout and editing in the world. The first edition Dungeon Master's Guide could have used a few more passes. You know what I mean? Like, for real. But so it doesn't mean it's not a good product or it's not worth using. Like, I wouldn't turn my nose up at something just because I looked and thought, not the best production value, right?
Yeah, look at Classic Traveler. Classic Traveler is a great example. I mean, that was all text. Barely, if it had any art, I really didn't come across much. And it still carried sci-fi gaming for goodness knows how long. And eventually it did get a great layout and great art and all that good stuff. I mean, our friend John the Basic Expert, who was here a couple shows ago, kind of promoting his game, he's done artwork for Classic Traveler, or for Mongoose Traveler, rather. Yeah. And that spawned Mongoose Traveler, Cepheus, Hostile. Paul Elliott, who wrote Hostile, he's just come out with another one, for another book for Earth itself. And he worked on the Alien RPG for Free League. So this is, it had to come from somewhere. And even if the start isn't the end result that we have now, it was still a start, and it was a great start, and it got people interested, and that's really what counts.
Well, yet again, back in the ancient of days, my old man used to play D&D with a group on ship because he was in the Navy, right? And that makes sense. It's not just that you're military and you have a free time and the expendable income, as is often the case, but specifically in the Navy is kind of like always being on base. There's nowhere to go and nothing to do. And if you don't find something to do, your commanding officers will find something for you to do because that's what their job is. So people get hobbies. I'm assuming, Wolfgar, to a lesser degree, it's kind of similar for you when you were working in the confinement industry. Is people have to find something to do, so
Yep.
it's like, okay, what happened last night? Well, last night we were all in port. We all had fun. It's now day after. We're a little hungover, and it's D&D time. Okay, so where's the adventure? It's like, well, I wasn't really sure, guys, so I made something up on a bar napkin last night.
Yep.
Right? It's really good, but I had to be a little wasted to make it. So all of my notes are going to be about the size of a coaster, and it's like,
I mean, the inmates where I used to work, they would actually, like, they had cards, they had decks of cards, they had
Right.
Scrabble, they had all kinds of these, little board games and stuff like that, chess, whatever. And there was a dorm where one group did actually make their own RPG using nothing but decks of cards.
right.
And unfortunately, that got squashed because administration was like, that could be a security threat. And I'm like, they didn't even have any maps. Everything was like literally handwritten.
Wow.
How do you figure? What did you find in there? I don't quite get it, but whatever. That's bureaucrats doing bureaucrat shit. So I have no interest in it.
As someone named Wistmore says, Mordheim is still going strong even after being discontinued for decades. The best thing that happened to that game is for the Shore Wizards to abandon it.
Indeed. And this was something Child of Ash pointed out when you were talking earlier about adjusting like the armor stats and everything. He said there are actual physical consequences for the characters. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, bringing it back around to our guest. Hi, Ian. My name is Joe. And our subject matter. First, I have to say, Bhakashal! But my
thank you.
No, my thing is, I'm actually very enthused that I came in just at the time that you were describing the setting, because this is the most interesting product that I have heard of that I know nothing about, because of the number of people that have gone out of their way to be like, I'm backing Bhakashal. I'm backing Bhakashal. They got it in their screen names. They got it everywhere, and it's like,
I've had a lot of enthusiastic support. It's been lovely, actually.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know anything about this, but the vigorous response, that very enthusiastic, like almost retro 90s response, where people are like slapping it on their t-shirt as a flag and saying, I support Bhakashal, do you? It's like, oh man, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I had to wonder about that, because I saw a few people with that, and I was like, where is this? So I had to type. I have to admit, I typed it into Twitter just to see, where's the origin point, so I can see what this is about.
I don't really do any advertising. I'm just on Twitter, right? So
I don't think you have to.
I put out updates and stuff, but
I don't think you have to. You've got tons of people doing it for you.
Yeah, well, that's that's great. That's awesome.
I mean, I
appreciate
the
enthusiasm.
Thing. Like, as a for instance, I just spent. Hey guys, we're talking about money for a minute. I just spent $400 on property taxes that I can't spare. Okay. Yeah, I'm feeling it. All right. So I have to very carefully moderate my gaming investments.
Yeah.
Right.
Same with here.
So even if I wanted Bhakashal, which I do, I probably could not purchase Bhakashal, at least not immediately. Right. So when I hear about an interesting game, it's like, I gotta know all the things. I gotta know, is it good? Does it care? What is it interesting? And interesting is the important one. Is it something weird that I've not seen before, or that really speaks to me? Right?
What I've been trying to do is to I pretty much post once or twice a day on Twitter. That's the rule, right? Keep engagement going. And I've been trying to post at least one sort of game-related thing, whether it be a spell or a discussion of a mechanic like that, on a pretty regular basis. So if people are following me, they're going to have a pretty good sense of where things are going, just because I've given them pieces of it over time, right? That's because, again, I haven't really invested in advertising in other ways. That's my way of doing it, is just showing a little bit of what's going on.
Well, see, the thing is that one of those things that comes up in conversation is how the Shore Wizards, because that's what I'm going to call them. I'm going to call them the Wizards of the Shore. The Shore Wizards want to take tabletop gaming and make it a lifestyle brand, right? And being that I am an old man of the old time, I remember Midway Games and Mortal Kombat, right? And what does that have to do with anything? Well, Mortal Kombat obviously was directly competing with Street Fighter, and both are good games in their given genre. We're talking Street Fighter 2 versus Mortal Kombat 2 and 1, right? So what Midway did is they made themselves a lifestyle brand. They very much presented it. It's like, do you want to be the ultimate Mortal Kombat player and or fan? You have to get the Mortal Kombat jacket. You have to get the Mortal Kombat sunglasses. You have to watch the Mortal Kombat cartoon because that's the only way your brand can win. And it's like, to make NetherRealm a bunch of money, because that's not actually how you get good at video games. You get good at video games by playing video games.
Well, I think
Right.
the challenge here is that WTC is just they're not really they're not as much a gaming company as just a brand, right? And what they're going to do is they're going to do whatever's going to make them money. That's why they had that meeting where they said they wanted to make the brand more monetizable. That makes perfect sense,
Well,
right? And you're not making a lot of money. You're going to make more money if you turn D&D into something quasi-electronic that you can do microtransactions with, and you have to get the buy-in, you have to go in through them, as opposed to what it's always been, which is you buy the books, then you do whatever you want with it, right?
And the reason I bring it up is because Bhakashal is a sort of a warm breath of fresh air, very much like how I grew up, where it's like, is that a Bhakashal shirt? Yeah. Where did you get it? It's like, oh no, I made it. It's like, this is my patch. I put it on myself. It's very metal community, because in the metal community, you go to a concert, and I'm not going to say that it's directly status based, because we're not actually like that, but you give more esteem to the guy who has a bunch of patches from a bunch of concerts, because he's traveled the world to go to as many open air metal festivals as possible. He's seen Ozzy, he's seen Maiden, he's seen Sabbath. Oh my god, right? And that's the thing, is that that's the actual lifestyle. The actual lifestyle is a measure of your enthusiasm, not a measure of your corporate loyalty. And
Yeah, for
like
sure. I was on Dragon's Foot for about 8-9 years with one of the first edition forums, and I contributed to and was on and did some of the editing for a free gaming magazine where we published tons of free content, right? Like, I did that for a really long time. This is the first time I tried to take that content and sell it, right? But for years it was done for free and happily shared, and I took advantage of. That's the thing. I once told somebody, like, why do you play first edition? It's it's a dead edition. There's current material supporting other editions. Why would you do that? It's like, because there's an inexhaustible supply of first edition materials out there.
Yeah.
It's just not produced by Wizards of the Coast or whatever, right? It's produced by people who enjoy the game and love how it works. So I could never run out of material for the game that I play, right?
Well,
and I don't have to wait around for any company to produce what I want. It's already there, right? So to me, that's a huge advantage over playing the current system that's supported, where you have to buy extremely expensive stuff in order to be a part of it, right? It's just makes sense to me. Why not play a game that's got all the support out there and lots of people creating really good free content, which is the other big thing that I realized over the years, which is that just because it's produced by a professional, if you produce it, if a company produces it, a big business produces it, it'll probably have more art than otherwise would be there, and it'll have a more polished look, perhaps, but it doesn't make it a better product. There's tons of really good materials floating around out there that I'm more than happy to engage with. So,
well, that's sort of the key thing. Is I've been in conversations, and you may or may not know this, but I think you've been around and you've seen me ramble. That I'm kind of the World of Darkness guy. I have become the avowed World of Darkness guy among OSR people, because they literally are now coming to me saying, "Talk to Joe. He knows all about that World of Darkness edgelord stuff." So, okay, thanks, guys. I guess. And the thing is that when it comes to that, people say, "Well, Joe, why do you play New World? New World is the terrible edition." And I have said before, because VTM is antiquated. And people are like, what does that mean? What do you mean antiquated? It's like, look, it was created in 1991, 1992 by people who didn't know what they were doing, who were just enthusiastic game fans. It was their first game, right? And they did basically everything with that engine they could. They did everything with that plot they could. It was the right idea to close the old world in 2000 to dovetail with the end of the world theme, right? Because they had just about played every joke they could with the coming apocalypse. They needed something new. So, in a sense, New World is a direct evolution. It's a game by people who know how to make games for a setting that if you like it, you like it, right? On the other hand, when people are like, well, I guess we have to play 5th Ed now. It's like, the only reason we have to play 5 is because 4 was so terrible. And now that we have 5, and the corporation owning it has basically turned stringently against its own buying populace. It's like, man, we can always play 1st and 2nd. You don't even know, because those games were made very, very well, right? They have a certain amount of, at least on a mechanical level, timelessness. Whether or not you like an individual specific setting is a little more iffy. Now,
it's more aesthetic, right?
Now, I mean, I'm more forgiving. I actually think 5e is a pretty good platform as a mechanical surface.
I've never played.
It's okay.
Yeah. At the core level, it's fine. It's serviceable, but I'm still seriously old school. It had better options. I like that restriction because it forces you to think a little more creatively.
I also find too that one of the, particularly 1st edition, again, this is just me, but particularly 1st edition, it has such a aesthetic to it, right? And everybody I know so for example, 2nd edition, AD&D is an incredibly good game. Well put together. They smoothed out a lot of the bumps, and then they just ran with it, and they produced so much material. And I would 100% play 2nd edition any minute, and enjoy it, and highly recommend it to people. But there's a palpable sort of flavor change that happens over the course of those editions, and it's to get it back to the spellbook for a second. One of the reasons why I did this, I thought at one point of just releasing a spellbook of my own spells, right, and just not bothering trying to interface it at all with the existing 1st edition system. So make a retro clone with an entirely different set of spells. And I thought, no, because I happen to really like the 1st edition spells. They're well written. Now, they're not all well written. There's lots of mistakes in there. And, everybody who's run the game has corrected them for their own table because of editing or, inference or whatever the case might be. But the ideas are there and the flavor is there. And I didn't want to get rid of that for a retro clone. I didn't want to come up with a completely different set of spells. I wanted to say, let's find something that's in the same sort of flavor and same sort of stuff and sort of add it together. So
there's the example, quite frankly. If I go to a newbie, or if I go to 3 newbies and I say, what are the mechanics of the wish spell? They'll proceed to tell you the verbatim by book what a wish can do, right? But if I go to an oldster and I go, hey guys, what's a wish do? Everybody starts to sweat in gamer and is like, we do not speak of the wish spell, for the wish spell is doom and the wish spell is fear, because we all know that the actual answer is it's a wish and it does whatever the heck you want it to, which is why the DM laughs and starts rubbing his hands together when you say.
But it's also sort of a wish. It's also sort of a barometer, though, I think, of the kind of game you're playing, because for some referees, when you see a wish spell, it's like, okay, how can I twist this and make it difficult for the players or give them a consequence, as opposed to looking at it and saying, let's see if we can make something interesting happen with this. And I don't know. I've always, I think it's too easy to. It's also a 9th level spell, for heaven's sakes. If you're casting it, it should do something more or less like what you want it to do, right? That would be good. But that's another question too, as to whether or not you want magic to be entirely reliable, right? One of the
2 things particularly with the wish spell that I've noticed. Yeah, you've got some of those DMs who will look at it and go, how can I twist this? Because they've seen Wishmaster and they love doing that. But I actually
legend mythology, like it's
right.
It's a trope, right?
And I saw this earlier today, which it was a little, I guess it was a YouTube video, like a little YouTube short where a guy's showing off his automated home back in the 70s or early 80s. And he's like, curtains close and they close, and he's like, lights on, lights come on. Fireplace light, and fireplace comes on, and he's showing this guy, and the guy's like, "Oh, this is brilliant! Hey, can I try it?" He goes, "Yeah, go ahead, have a go." And he opens the curtains, he turns off the lights, he shuts the fire down, and he goes, "So your home can do anything, anything at all. Just go ahead and say the word." He goes, "Chair," and this big recliner just kind of comes to the middle of the room, close to him. He sits down. He's like, "Bugger me!" And the other guy's like, "No!" So it's like some DMs will give you exactly what you want, understanding this is a 9th level spell, but boy, you got to watch your wording. But let's get back to this, because I wanted to talk about this for a while. Now, earlier you mentioned that you wanted, like, you noticed there were some problems with the how spells were written in AD&D,
Sure.
and you wanted to kind of do it a little differently. Go ahead with that. I would love to hear this.
Right. So what it was, there were cases where I'll give you just an easy example because we're looking at this particular spell. The Benison spell is based on the Bless spell, right? And Bless in first edition Dungeons and Dragons is an interesting spell because you can't cast it on anyone who's already fighting.
Right.
And it takes, I think, a turn to cast. So you have to spend 10 minutes casting it before you're going to go into battle or something like that. But it only lasts for, I think, 6 rounds. So it's this combination of conditions that meant nobody bothered ever using it. That's I had a lot of time to watch what spells people picked over the years, and I've run games for lots of different groups, lots of different skill levels. I've run it for min maxers, I've run it for role players, I've run it for every kind of player you can imagine, and certain spells were just never used. They just weren't, because there was some weird condition on them that made the person think, you know what, I don't want to bother with that. So that's what I meant by rewriting the spells. It's not that they were written in a way that was contradictory or wouldn't work. It's that they had conditions on them that meant that people rarely would use them. And I'm thinking, what's the point in having spells in the game that people are never going to use? That's just silly to me. So
that is actually a example of something that did in 5th ed that made me very, very sad. I have always felt that the various classes, especially when there's a social component to them, need to represent their practical elements. So if you're a cleric, you're a priest, you need to do priest things.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's a spell they introduced in a Unearthed Arcana. I don't know if it got reprinted, but it's basically in 5e, priests can do marriages.
Okay.
Right? Which is great. It's like, oh wow, yeah, no, I'll totally do a hand fasting or a
that's
wedding
a spell?
Yeah, that's a spell. The thing is that they made it very mechanically particular, where you can basically link 2 lives together and they both get shared benefits, but only once ever, unless one of them dies. And when you really dig into the particulars of it, it's kind of awful, because it basically means that a player who is into mechanics and not into thematics will marry an NPC and then drag their NPC wife into battle and use them as a human shield for the buffs.
Okay. That all seems strangely that all seems strangely particular. Wow, that's weird.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I wasn't really worried about stuff like that. It was
well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, I like the idea that here you have this spell that's basically Bless, basically, right? But it's like, all right, I'm gonna whip out the sprinkler mace, and I'm gonna holy water the party while I'm smashing skulls, and it's an AOE Bless. That's awesome, because as you say, the idea that you couldn't really get the mechanical value out of Bless because you had to do it to a peaceful group pre-combat, but it only lasts 6 rounds. You have no idea how long it's going to take you to get into a fight, and then how long you're going to be in it is kind of
That was the one problem with that spell that I had, was like, okay, how do you, especially if you're doing Fog of War, which is, when we talked about randomization, that's what it's supposed to simulate. Especially if you're mapping out a dungeon on a battle mat or graph paper, you want to map it as you go. It's like, how do you know? Are you detecting these threats ahead of time? Are you constantly in detection mode? It doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Well, one of the things that doesn't get into the spell as much, because it's mainly just the spells, the character creation stuff. We'll talk about the rules, but just to give you an example, one of the things that I did for the game was I made all spellcasting classes what I call free casters. So for bestials and for seers, or for for druids and clerics. What that means is, let's say you're a 5th level cleric or 5th level seer. You can cast any spell from 1st, 2nd, or 3rd level list. So you take your level divided by 2 round up, right? So I call it the half casting rule. So that means if you're a 5th level priest, you can cast any 1st level, 2nd level, or 3rd level priest spell up to a certain number of times per day. Doesn't matter which one it is or whatever the case might be. There's no more waking up in the morning and picking the spells you're going to use. And I know a lot of like older edition players and 1st edition types love that part of the system, the fact that you have to make that decision and make that resource management decision. And I certainly hear that. But what I didn't want was what I saw in almost every 1st edition game I ever had the pleasure to be a part of, which is that people would all memorize the same spells or pray for the same spells because they knew those were the ones they most likely need. And if they took a slot for a spell they didn't use, it was seen as such like a waste. So this is what I noticed. So in Bhakashal, the priests and the druids, they get to pick from any list as long as it's low enough level based on their levels. That's them. For the warlocks and the phantasmists, the illusionists and the magic users, it's a little different. They go out, they find spells, they try to memorize them. That's your to-know roll, basically. It's based off your intelligence. If they're successful, it's permanently in their mind. And at any time they want to cast it, up to a certain number of times per day, they can cast it. It's not level specific. A 1st level character could find a 9th level spell and successfully manage to memorize it. Then they could cast it once per day for the rest of their lives if they wanted to. However, in addition to that, they have spell casting failure odds every time they cast. It's again based on their intelligence with some modifiers. If they fail their casting, there's a chance of harm. So statistically speaking, I save you the trouble. If a 1st level character found a wish spell and was successful in memorizing it permanently, they'd have a 30% chance every time they cast it of it going wrong. And then they'd be dead. So you wouldn't last for very long. But the point of all this was to say that certain casters now, magic isn't guaranteed for them. It's something they actually... Now, there's ways to, if you fail your roll, there's ways to short circuit that, but there's only a certain number of them and they require rolls and stuff like that. So it adds an element of danger into the process that wasn't there before, which really changes the nature of the class. I wanted that too. Not every class is like it, but the main point is that now people don't necessarily only, when they pick up a spell, they think, once I permanently memorize this, I don't have to pick it every morning. I can just use it when I need it. And suddenly stuff gets used that wasn't used before.
Well, on top of that, when you have a wizard who's operating, or a magic user who's operating within their element, even then, it's pretty much like the fighter. The fighter's only going to be able to go, but so long before they're gassed and winded, and now they're going to be on the defensive quite a bit. So they're having to conserve their energy as much as the fighter is.
Yeah.
Well, one of the conversation points that comes up quite regularly in my discussions of mechanics with other DMs is an idea that there's the game that is written and there's the game that is played, right? Yeah. And this isn't just a question of things like house rules or table adjustments. This is the idea that some games have mechanics that just don't work, so you have to create a workaround. It does happen, even in a primary product. And while I'm not going to say your personal experiences aren't true or anything, that's not what we're talking about. I will say that the idea that wizards specifically or clerics specifically choose their spells at the beginning of the day and only go off of that doesn't happen. Or at least in my experience, that doesn't happen. What actually happens is you have your number of spell slots, right? And if you haven't memorized your specific spells as a player, because you know exactly what you need when you need it, what actually happens is everybody has the book open, and when it's not their turn, you hope, they're scrolling through figuring out which one did I pick for the specific task that they're involved in, because otherwise they never have the right spell, right? And this is a more common
so
thing.
they choose on the spot.
They choose on the spot, but they limit themselves by their slots. And this is
well, that's essentially what I've done, right? I've designed the system to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
But the thing is that this is a particularly new game thing, because at the same time, 5e and the like often do not remind people why wizards have grimoires, right? Because for wizard, their specific play loop, the magic user play loop, was get out in the world, find scroll, transcribe scroll. Because because you didn't get I've leveled up, I automatically know a bunch more spells, right? You
Well, in first edition,
specifically-
you get one spell given to you when you level up.
right, but
It
you
doesn't
still-
specify if it's your choice or if it's chosen for you.
Right,
It just
but
says you get one.
But you still have to go out of your way to collect spells, like
Yeah.
Pokemon.
The tables are weighted towards them
where-
more, right? Because the
whereas-
tables, the treasure tables in first edition are weighted towards temporary things rather than permanent, and scrolls are fairly heavily weighted. So your odds of getting a scroll in a treasure
Right.
hoard, if it has magic at all, are actually pretty good.
Which is actually nice, yeah. But then for clerics and druids and the like, it's very much well, my god has told me my spells, so I got them by divine inspiration. So you
Well, again,
theoretically
you know,
have all the
if the
spells.
question is what people do at the table versus what the game's designed to do, I agree with you. They don't do it the way the game is always designed to do, but that's not really the point here. The point is that the way the system that's written for first edition, this is what it produces at the table if you run it as written. And that's why I wanted to sort of do something a little bit differently here. So what I see at my tables and what I've seen at my tables for quite a few years is that a whole different set of spells get used. And those weird niche utility spells that basically never get memorized or never even get turned down when they're found sometimes, right? Are spells that actually get to be used in game. My favorite example of this was always Gaze Reflection. It's like a first or second level. It's a first level illusionist spell in first edition D&D. And every time somebody rolled that as their spell, they rolled their eyes. They're like, when am I ever going to get to use this? What day will I wake up knowing I'm going to encounter a basilisk, right? So it just was never used. And there was other great, fun, flavorful spells like that in first edition that I just never saw getting used. And that's what the idea was, right? Was to change that.
Well, that's actually what I'm getting at is, at least in 5th ed, I can't speak to 4th because, let's face it, the less said about 4th corpse, the better. One of those things is that they added more spells across books, right?
Right.
But you never use them. You never use them because there's no dedicated spell book, right?
Right.
And those spells often have the power creep problem. Why would I ever use, say, chromatic orb when I can just use green flame blade and hit 2 guys at once, right? The thing of
Sure.
it is that
well, if you
because of that-
randomize spell distribution, however, that changes the
Right.
question, right? Because you may
that's-
not be able to get the spell you want, but you might get something
that's-
else. So
and
then
that's what I'm
overlap
getting
makes a
at.
little bit of sense.
That's what I'm getting at. What you've
Yeah.
done that I really like is the combination of both. You've added to the total list of spells. You've expanded it out, and you've added variations on theme. So, like, the regular Bless spell still exists, but also Benison now exists.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, right? So you can have a spellbook with both, right? And
Yeah, for sure. That's
you're encouraging randomization so that the players, you can cast anything available to you, but you don't necessarily know every permutation of what's available to you.
Yeah, that's a fair point too, because it's not, players. Some players read everything, some players read nothing, right? So they're not necessarily going to be aware of the sort of wide range of spells. The other thing is the naming conventions, which was just a Vancian thing, right? I just like Vance, so I thought it'd be fun to have magic user spells named spells and illusionist spells named spells. But what it also does is it partially occludes the actual function of the spell. Magic missile, even if you don't know what the mechanics are, you kind of know what it means, right? The spell names that I put down there, they're suggestive, but you don't necessarily know what they mean until you read them, right? So it makes it a little more
something
obscure.
that D&D and its various clones have never done, which I think would be very good. Which would take this idea, run with it, $1 million idea, because it's obviously implicit. It's something that Gary used to do. It's in the book. I would love rules for making your own spells, right? In your own setting, because Tensor is Ernie. We all know it, right?
Well, there are spell research rules in Bhakashal, so you'll be able to, if your player comes to you and says, "I want to research and write a spell," you can do that. There's rules for that. Right. But what the rules do is they tell you how long it's going to take, how much it's going to cost, what are the odds of it working or not, how can you change or improve those odds, what do you need to get to make it happen. What they don't say is, how do you come up with an idea for a spell? That's not part of the system. It's not. You know what I mean? It's a system to allow you to take an existing idea. I want a spell that makes this happen, and then to do that.
I'm a snarky pain in the ass. I want a spell called Wolfgar's Amazing Glorious Sunglasses that protects you against flashbangs.
Well, you can definitely do that with the mechanics that are given, but what it doesn't do, for example, is give you the specific mechanics for it. Like, for example, Elo Lamentations of Flame Princess, they have a monster generator, which I've used before. It's awesome. I think it's great. But again, the way it works is you can roll on it to get the size, the shape, the powers, the attacks, and everything for your monster. I haven't produced something like that because I don't think there'd be any point. How you mechanize the spell is based on roughly what level you want it to be, and you just go find similar spells, right? You look and say, if my spell wants to do this, what spell that exists is similar to that? Look at the mechanics, and then you mirror them, make it a little more, more powerful or less powerful, whatever the case might be.
I mean, I understand and I agree, but at the same time, I recently got a job, because I'm smart, I got a job, in game design for a small indie video game publisher, right? Which is like neat. And when he came to me and he's like, Joe, I want you to work with me. His argument is that I had all of these years of tabletop experience and all this wide range of games. I actually had, in his opinion, more practical gaming knowledge than most of my peers in the indie sphere for games. I'm like, what do you mean? I just do tabletop. I've not written a game like this. I don't know the lore. And he's like, no, you know game design. You've exposed yourself to a bunch of game design. You just don't think it. And I think that this is actually a truism, because I think once I got into it, I was like, oh wow, yeah, no, my skill set has a bunch of applicability. I think that many players come away or lack the confidence to recognize that it's like, no, once you've played D&D for 10, 15, 20 years, you do game design. You know some game design.
Well, you've
stuff.
Absorbed a lot, right?
Yeah.
And unconsciously, you've absorbed a lot of what's there, and you've also absorbed your habits and stuff like this, right? Which can be good and bad as well, right? Like one of the reasons why I randomize everything is precisely because I'm a long-term dungeon master who's done this a long time, and I fell into patterns. Right, I'd have my NPCs default to particular solutions and particular attack patterns. I'd had my monsters do the same thing. It's like it doesn't really matter on one level from the player's perspective as long as they have a good time. But from my perspective, I'm also trying to enjoy this. Right, I'm also running games in a game system I know really well. I want to do things that are a little bit surprising for me. So to me, that's the advantage of randomizing things. It's an extra step, which some people don't want to take because it takes a little bit of time, I guess. But I also don't want to rush my game. I get a lot of that online. People saying, "Oh, this takes too long and that takes too long." I'm like, well, you're supposed to be enjoying it while you're doing it. So who cares if it takes too long?
Well,
right.
Perfect example of that is if you haven't seen the regular rants, people are like, "I hate the hour-long shopping trip," right?
Right.
Because what they're actually talking about is this theoretical player or this theoretical DM who views the shopping trip as role play and wants you to haggle with every single shop owner, which admittedly might be a thing, right? But as an old school player, I'm like, no, I'm fine with an hour-long shopping trip. And somebody goes, why? What do you mean? Are you one of those story gamers? Like, no, it's because I'm really granular. And I want to get down to every bolt, arrow, and sling stone that I'm carrying on my person because I need that shit.
But with respect to how it goes when you're running it, though, just to be clear about this, like the game either does or does not have, either in the rules or at your table, a procedure to follow when certain things happen. So just one example. In first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, if you're in an encounter with something that can talk and is intelligent, and you talk to them, you parlay with them, whatever you say, then the rules kick in by the book. The rules are you make a reaction roll to see what they do. So that means for any talking intelligent creature in D&D, and just think about that for a second. There's a lot of talking intelligent monsters, for example. For any talking intelligent creature that you encounter, if you engage in conversation with it, the rules tell you that at that point you must now roll an encounter reaction roll. That happens whether you want it to or not, right? So when someone's going and shopping for things in the market, I want to go and I want to buy a mount for my character, right? You can go down to the market and buy a mount. That's role played at the table. That's a thing that you do. Now, you can, if you want, hand wave that kind of stuff and say, you want to buy a horse? Okay, it costs this much. How much do you want to spend? Okay, we're done. You can do that. And I've done that sometimes just to move things along because we need to get to the session fast or whatever the case might be. But to my mind, purchasing something means you go, so it does get role played out
I
at the
see
table.
you going through that book, Raven.
Yeah.
I see that first ed monster manual. I know that thing back and forward like some people know their Bible. Yeah.
Yep, I kind of stayed on page 19 to 20 where all the demons are.
So roll down a little bit, or roll up, I guess. Sorry, keep going. Other direction. Sorry, I got my down and my up mixed up. Type 5 demons.
All of our eyes are drawn to the succubus.
Now, Type 5 demons are badass. They are badass because I believe they have a teleportation ability. So, makes for an amazing fight.
That is an
multiple
example.
Attacks, teleportation ability, crazy powerful stuff.
That is also an example of where I am at odds with my fellow occasional 5e player. I'm gonna name drop because I'm not afraid to name names. So there's this guy called XP to Level 3. Maybe you've heard of his channel. He did a video about the most dangerous monster in 5e, and he said that it was a given demon who had or devil that had true invisibility, because once he activates it, you basically can't break it. So he can slaughter you, and you can't see him. You have to deal with those blind fighting rules. And the whole time I'm like, no, that's not why this guy is dangerous. The reason he's dangerous is he's a devil, and he will go back to his home plane, and he will sit in his little evil fort, and he will contemplate how to destroy your life and ruin your family line for 1,000 years, because he has the advantage of immortality and you don't. You know,
and probably a significantly high magic resistance and a whole bunch of other crazy things.
I mean,
it's literally the question at the end of Dark Knight with the Joker. Why would I lose the battle for Gotham's soul in a fist fight with you?
Hey, Raven.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out at 12:30. I've got some family commitments to take care of. So
All right.
I wanted to check in and see if there's anything else specific you wanted to ask. Or
No, I was wondering if there was anything that you really wanted to put out there. I really don't want to leave anything on the table. I really want you to get as much out there as you can.
So basically, this is the first of my bits in the setting. The next one is going to be the setting manual, because I think that's necessary to sort of pull a lot of this stuff together and show how the mechanics are kind of meshed with that. And then after that will be the character generation one. And then I've got a monster one and a magic item one coming down the pipe too, and a combat one as well, because I've also streamlined and changed first edition combat in a way I think works really, really well, and has been play tested to death. That's the other fun thing about this. But 4 years ago now, I started up a after-school program running D&D games, and it's been a fertile source of playtesting for me. No, not obviously everything. Like, I couldn't playtest every spell in the spell book. That's not going to happen. But in terms of the combat system, for example, I have, and I'm very excited about that, because as fun as spells are, combat system in D&D has always been a fractious thing. Like, there's been a lot of people who don't like the abstraction of it, and the whole purpose of Bhakashal being a retro clone is I lean in. So I take things that are already there and I tweak them in some way to make them interesting. So I borrowed a little for initiative, for example. I'm essentially using 2E's system, but I switched the main dice from a D10 to a D6. And I have the weapon speeds. Once you do that, it all works out brilliantly. It organizes combat really easily. I've run it for 10-year-olds. They have no issue with it whatsoever. You run big combat, small combats, no issues whatsoever. So a lot of that's coming out too. That'll be smaller though, and I may pair some of those things up.
So we're looking at 5 books total,
something like that. Yeah. But I may pair things up. That's the thing. I might put the combat and the monster book together, right? Just for fun, because the monster book's not long. I stopped when I got to like 30, and I'm like, I'm done, because I wanted to focus on other things in the setting, and I can release more later. But for now, I've got a small monster book, and the combat book's not that big either, right? So between those two, it might be easier for me to put those two together. Right. The only reason I separated out the spell book from the character generation thing was just it was too big. That's it. I think there's 20 classes in Bhakashal, right? So the main classes have their analogs, and then there's subclasses that are various different combinations of things. So between that and the playable groups and stuff like that, there was a lot of material there. So that's how I chose to break it down. But yeah, so those will be coming out over the next couple of months, basically one every probably 3 months or so.
Wow.
I haven't decided if I'm going to pop onto Kickstarter for any of these yet. I might, because I'd like to up the art ante a little bit. But I'm a little nervous about Kickstarter, because if things don't work out or you misestimate your cost, you can be on the hook for a lot of money, and that's just not something I can do. So that's why I went the Lulu route, because it doesn't cost you anything to make the stuff. You just make it available for other people to print on demand, right? So there was no...
Our friends at the Red Room, that's pretty much all they do is like Lulu or Giant Slayer Games, Big Geek Emporium, their own website. So they offer it direct, but they do have like a few different storefronts that they release their material through. And the print on demand through Lulu is pretty good.
It is. I before I committed to this, I had them print out a soft cover, a hard cover, to look at them and see what they were like and see if they were well stitched and all this kind of stuff. I worked in publishing for 11 years, so I'm somewhat knowledgeable about how this stuff works, and the quality's there, so I'm happy with that. And it's not ideal. There's other platforms that might get me more, and again allow me to produce something a little bit more spectacular. But whatever. Like I'm at the point now where the only thing I'm concerned about is, like, I have a map, for example, I produced for Bhakashal, and it's okay. It's not stellar because I'm not really a map maker and I don't know the programs, but it has that kind of old school charm of being sort of good enough and again showing your effort and your care, as opposed to being super highly polished. However, I had another map I needed for my setting to be done, and it was beyond my capacity to make. So I got somebody to do that for me. Right. So there's limits to what you can do sort of without the skill levels necessary and still make it serviceable. So that's the idea. It's like I'm not necessarily going to go all out on stuff if I don't have to, but I want to make sure that the stuff that's there is of a certain quality. But yeah, that's the plan over the next basically year and a half or so. Self-publish the stuff, and I don't expect it to make bank. I want to get the material out there for the people who are interested. And honestly, at some point when it's all done, I'll have it all formally done up in published volumes. I can use at my table because I'm using scattered documents and electronic files and stuff like this. So when I got the spellbook, the first thing I thought was, oh, no more leafing through that freaking PDF trying to find things. I can just have a book in my hand at the table, right? That's the motivation.
Again, we were talking about how in second ed days they put out so much product and it was so great because there were so many options and so many interesting permutations. One of the things I have told the guys in the OSR sphere is, so to date we largely replicate. We neither innovate nor create wholly new things. Not that there's anything wrong with replicating what you love, but specifically we have to do more and new, right? Because even if we're not directly competing with the big ones, we're competing for market share. We're trying to get eyes on books, right? And in my opinion, you can tell the health of a game line by how prodigiously it produces content for that game line, right? Because it used to be, back in the day, you started with your Tolkien-like setting, right? And then you did your Oriental Adventures book. And then you did some monster books, maybe. And they never quite got where I was really hoping they'd go. Like, they never really did an Africa book. Or maybe they did a Mesoamerica book, but it was only a side note. And they didn't do, like, an Australia book. And all these interesting places I wanted to visit that I never saw in game book, right?
Well, they didn't do it for D&D. They did it for other systems. They've had stuff like that for other systems. But
that's what I'm saying.
You're right. Back in the day for D&D, they didn't branch out that far.
But here we are. We've got these retro games trying to do retro, and it's like, guys, you can't just replicate only what D&D did. You got to stretch your wings a bit and do something else to get butts in seats. Otherwise, people will be like, "But I already bought this. Why would I buy more of this?"
Or I'm already running something at home that's interesting like that. There's so many independent people like that I see on Twitter on a regular basis. With this, I got to go after this. That are just showing chunks of their home game and what they do at their table, and I'm thinking, that's pretty good actually, and it's kind of better than a lot of the published stuff I've seen. So it's,
that's the thing.
I think there's a mountain of stuff like that out there, right? So
that's the thing, is that even if I didn't have Bhakashal, like say it didn't happen my way, but somehow somebody got me a gift and I happened to get this book, your spell book.
Yeah,
I can use that. That has ubiquitous usability in other things. So I'm like, oh wow, Bhakashal, spells, ooh, do. That's a healthy game. And you're saying you're going to add more to that. I'm like, yes, show me.
It's just going to take a long time because I'm a one-man operation. So
right.
Anyway, lads, I gotta book it. But
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being so generous with your time, man. You're welcome back
absolutely.
anytime at all. Just say the
Thank
word.
you. Thank you. Next time something's coming down the pipe, I'll let you know.
Oh my god.
Definitely. Definitely.
Oh
let
my
us know.
god.
Cheers. All right, guys. Take care, eh?
You
Bye.
too.
Cheers.
Why is it? Why is it every time we have a guest I'm really excited to be here for that I have to be late? Why is that? Why does God hate me?
Or maybe your alarm clock hates you. I don't know.
No,
I know it's like
does.
super early over
I
there.
am one of those people who I will acclimate to my alarm clock. So I either need multiple alarm clocks or I need to like put them across the room at maximum volume, and I will still somehow sleep through them.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, today was kind of an exception because I was up. These night shifts are fucking killing me, dude. Like,
Mhm.
I woke up. I went. I don't think I went to bed till probably about like 3 a.m. because I was my Halloween tradition continues where I watch like old horror flicks or documentaries on horror flicks, and I noticed I was starting to nod off at the desk pretty early, and I was like, okay, well, time to go to bed. So I go to bed, and then I can't go to sleep, and I've got YouTube going, and I'm watching more horror documentaries on Vlad the Impaler and shit like that, and I'm like, dude, what the fuck? And then finally I get to sleep. I wake up at like 8 a.m. and I'm like, oh god.
It took me a while to realize why people thought I was into torture porn. And once I did, I was like, oh no. So because of the specific age in which I was born, I missed the boat on like Halloween and Valentine's Day and that sort of thing. And I was a late comer to Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street because by then, the latter movies were out. They were basically jokes of themselves, but they were fun. And my parents were very much like, we're not really down with you watching slasher movies because you're a young person and we think there's a certain vicariousness to them that we don't think is appropriate. Like, my parents were very open. They let me see heavy metal way too young, but they were like, watching murdering people from the cameraman's perspective, maybe not. So when I was old enough and Saw came out, the first Saw movie, my folks saw it, I saw it, and was like, oh wow, this is a pretty good psychological horror. Because Saw 1 is perfectly made, right? It's not very gory, it's not super violent, but the context of what's gonna happen is pretty awful. And then over the progression of films, they got worse, but I was collecting them because it's like, oh, here's a long running horror series. They're only making 8 movies. I'm going to get each of them. And what I would do come around Halloween time is I'd watch horror movies, throughout the month. And on Halloween specifically, I would start early in the morning and I'd run old school black and white horror movies right up until kids with candy show up, so if the kids come in to get the candy, what's on? Oh, at worst it's George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, which is not super scary to everybody now, or
No.
Dracula, right? But about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, I'd swatch over to the hard stuff, and it's like, what's the hardest thing I've got? Well, I got the Saw movies. And so I think people got this misapprehension. It's like, oh god, Joe's into that violent torture porn because he's been watching it for 6 hours. It's like, yeah, one day a year, not all the time. What the heck?
Like, I really don't count the first few Saw movies as torture porn.
They're really not.
They're really no, because now Hostel was torture porn. Dude, like, I watched it one time. One time's all I needed. I was good.
The first Hostel was actually surprisingly good for what it was. The second Hostel I appreciated because it was a direct follow-up less than 5 minutes after the end of the previous. But after that I was like, no, I don't want to see more because it's so disgusting and it's so grandguinal and it's so intense. It's not fun anymore. And what was actually worse, even though it's not the same series, but maybe you've seen it, Screedsters.
No, I haven't seen that one.
It's a film about a group of fresh-faced American dipshits who travel down to like Brazil and get captured by guys in the jungle who are kidnapping Americans to harvest their organs because our Americans have better organs because we're healthier than the locals down there.
Jeez,
And
who
it's
likes
like
those guys?
it's like I get it, but at the same time it's like gross. Because the thing is it was a neat it's obvious that they had the idea, but they had no grander plot. Right? Even though people don't like this particular movie as an example, it didn't have the patina of one of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, where right at the end, as the character's escaping, she gets picked up by a limo and is talking to this very nice guy who it turns out is the patron of what's going on in Texas. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to take you back to the murderers because this is what we do now. And it's like, oh my God, the world is so much darker and weirder. None of that was in the torture porn bubble of the early 2000s. It was just how grievous can we get? And that's not good horror to me.
Well, this is something I wanted to bring up because this was something I didn't get to talk about, and I've been wanting to talk about this. But now that we have a minute here, Child of Ash, when he talks about this, when Josh talks about this, this is a digital version with live cam for other players to all be in the room, digital dice rolls, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. That's kind of what Wizards of the Coast is trying to put together. But unfortunately for Wizards, this is something we have been doing for a while. Wizards is just late as hell to the party. And the problem is Wizards saw this. What was it? Wasn't Roll20. I mean, I wouldn't use Roll20. I do not advocate its use. If you use it, fine, whatever. That's your choice. I'm directly boycotting them, and I don't want anything to do with them. For the same reason that I don't want to deal with Drive-Thru RPG. Drive-Thru RPG and Roll20 are part of Roll20 Inc. If you buy anything from Drive-Thru RPG, you will see a receipt that comes up in your email. It is not from One Bookshelf anymore. It's from Roll20. So what we've been doing is we have been using chat messengers such as Gilded and Discord. Well, Discord before they went full fucking, Big Brother on you. And Gilded, and the Gilded, you can have these play tables. That's how we do Horde Wars. That's how we've been doing it. And then for maps, and I've done this, I've actually run this particular dungeon for two people. Stein was one of them. And then a friend of mine, Moots, she was the other. And then I've run this same dungeon for myself and another guy. As a matter of fact, I posted about it. Instead of running it like me running it, I was actually a player. So it was two players, no GM. We just used Mythic GM Emulator and rolled on a random table for that. My character ended up dying on the way out. My friend's character, who was the halfling, managed to get away while I was being eaten. So there's that. That makes twice my character has literally died in the game. I was playing kind of I'll play the same guy, not the same guy, but a guy with the same name. So misfortune befell him in this game, and this is a low-level dungeon. It shows you just how lethal it is. But here's what we'll do. I can actually run the game. I could put this up. I will actually have a physical copy of the book. I'll be reading that physical copy, and then this will sit on the screen. And then I can go and we could just use the mouse cursor and do this little number here throughout the entire thing. So there's no reason to get lost. But here's the other thing. We could do without this. We could do without this entirely. And I'll show you how, because I'm literally reading descriptions like this. A short path leads to an open room that is lit just enough from the sunlight entering the cellar door. The path looks freshly traveled with no visible cobwebs. The children's description of the smell did not do it justice. You notice bear tracks headed away from the entrance of the cellar and a single door that looks too complicated for an animal to open. Slime trails are also seen throughout the room. And that's what you have to kind of go on. That's theater of the mind play. We've been doing that for quite some time. Digital dice rolls. Personally, I do not trust them. I would rather trust my players on an honor system, because most of the people I play with, when they roll a die, and we're talking like physical dice here. As a matter of fact, I'll turn camera back on for just a moment. Give me just a second here. Let me get the lamp back on.
Yeah, we want to see that hot dice action, Wolfgar.
Here we go. Get ready for some hot dice action.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, here we go. I'm going to start an OnlyFans. Okay, here we go. Solo layout. So right here,
Only dice?
I got, that was something I proposed. So this I actually got in a game shop back in my hometown, along with these dice. That's just Halloween shit. These dice also come from the same exact store, $6 a tube. So, and they have a website you can order online, but I would rather trust my players rolling these at their tables. They don't have to put the webcam on them. They just have to roll the appropriate dice and tell me what they got. I would rather trust that, because to me that's more trustworthy than these digital dice rollers. I just don't trust them to be random enough. I really don't. And there are days where they suck ass. There are days where they rock. They're all on algorithms, and those algorithms can kind of be a little chintzy. I'm not a fan of those. But if someone chose to take their webcam and put them on the dice, have a dice tray on the table, and roll as needed, that's fine too. But for all the players, there again, we kind of get into scheduling a little bit, because for all the players to meet up, like even with Horde Wars, I will try to show you that screen now. With Horde Wars, what we've done is we have shared. Let's see, can I do an app from here? Oh, it doesn't look like it's going to let me. Right, window. Here we go. Yeah, maybe we can. Let's see if I can pull this up. Here we go. Gilded. Okay. So I'm going to share this Gilded right here. So there's that.
Oh my god!
Right here. So we have a calendar in the Basic Experts Old School Tabletop RPG Hangout. Here's today. I've got a game of Horde Wars next week, 7 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. So we, I'm definitely going. So better add me. But in any case, this is the Horde Wars game that we're currently playtesting. And I'll have this here. Now, I don't have a physical copy of Horde Wars. I just have the PDF. And what I will do is I will go ahead and bring that up here and now.
I recently got it because it was about $5, and I was talking to Blackwall, who would who was sitting enjoying, I want to say, some brandy or some scotch in a tumbler, and it's like, this is a wonderful time. I think I'll pick up your book and thumb through it.
It's really good. Again, like, this is just the basic, and the advanced will be coming to Kickstarter at some point. When, I don't know yet, but there you go. This is the game I've been playtesting. This is like nearly 200 pages on its own. And much of it is a lot like the Google documents that I've been looking at. And this is what it looks like. The breakdown is super easy. The layout is just typical book layout. You've got tables that are created, and there you go. You do have artwork in there, good stuff too. And it takes, the character creation does not take long at all. So yeah, you can pick this up for like $5. You could do it through something like Gilded, or even Skype. We've done Skype, like I've done literal D&D 3.5 through Skype before, and didn't get to do it very long, but I got to do it. And you just play off the PDFs. Now, I'm going to say this. This is something else that I've talked about. I have so many PDFs right now that I literally, when the West End game Star Wars discussion came up recently, I posted a picture of White Star and said, "Yeah, I can." I think we were just discussing Star Wars and the movies, and some of us are like, "It's the OG trilogy for me." Oh, the Ewoks just were garbage and blah blah blah. No, me, I was a kid. I love that shit. Give me the original trilogy and the prequels. We're good. And then some people have kind of agreed with me, but after the Return of the Jedi, they're like, "Well, I can play West End game Star Wars, and there's my canon, or I have the expanded universe." I posted White Star and White Star Companion. That's what I have, and I said, "Yeah, I could do this. I do the exact same thing." Everybody's like, "Well, we just get Star Wars," and I'm like, "Yeah, but you don't understand. Okay, those books, some of them are beat up. They're kind of expensive." And then it occurred to me, like in this conversation, I literally go with kind of what's in front of me. You know, those physical books are sitting right there right there. My eyeballs are on them. And the West End game Star Wars thing came up. Little did I realize, and I'll show this off. Let me stop sharing this. Pull this up. I hope some of you guys are ready for this because it's going to blow your fucking mind. It blew mine.
You ready?
For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching at home, let's get right up. Suck it. Okay, so I'm going to show you this. Now, how I got them, I don't remember. I can't tell you, but I do have them. And what I have is what I'm going to share with you real quick.
Look, Wolfgar, you don't have to defend yourself to us. There are things you do at a truck stop for RPGs.
So here we go. And yeah, I've got them. I have the books. So yes, I could play West End game Star Wars D6, first or second edition, because I had to pick through this. I was like, okay, do I have first edition or second edition? I couldn't tell, and I had to kind of pick through them. I have both, apparently. I did find a 30th anniversary edition with the slip cover. I think it had the core rule book and a couple other things. It was like $110. And not gonna lie, I seriously considered it, but I was like, nah, not right now. So I don't know about picking them up in physical when I already have them in PDF. I don't know.
I mean, if the market were healthier and more interested in making collecting viable for people who aren't giant whales, then yeah, you should always get physical if you can. But the fact of the matter is, you're talking about a game that is largely out of print, unless you go print on demand, and is going to be at a premium. And this brings us around to the other problem of Roll20 quietly gathering up the digital gamer space, and then WotC not necessarily getting in bed with them, but learning their model to build their own walled garden. So that you have a choice between extremist boxes. Is as you may recall, I had a conversation, and the basic expert was so enthralled by what I said that he said, "I'm going live. Get in here." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "I want you on my show." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so there I am with the basic expert on his show. What we were talking about was the merger of Roll20 with, I want to say, Lulu or whoever's doing the bookshelf, whoever's doing their books.
One bookshelf.
Yeah. And what it was is that they had made changes to their policy on content.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that was a long time ago. We actually thought that was the Venger rule. It wasn't. It was just how they were going to do it because of Roll20.
Well, the thing is, I asserted that it was so that their new partner wouldn't have to worry about content because their partner had prohibitive content rules because they wanted to be an all-family publisher, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, you're gonna see that either Roll20 is gonna Drive Through and Roll20 are gonna stop carrying specific types of books or things, or they're gonna become more prohibitive about what you're allowed to play there.
Yep.
Right? They're gonna control your game, your table, because they don't want you having even implicitly lewd orgiastic scenes in the Temple of the Serpent. They don't want it.
I think I know Venger plays Chalt on Roll20.
Right.
I think eventually they're just going to arbitrarily ban him.
Right.
I think that's coming. I think his account, everything that he's got in there, it's going to be washed away. Now, next in a couple weeks, I'm setting this up right now. We're going to be talking with at least one of the crew from Tabletop, which is one Patty recommends.
Right.
There's another alternative if you want a virtual tabletop. Basically, a virtual tabletop is like having a dry erase battle mat, which I have.
Right.
And with battle mats, you can let me kind of go from broke to bespoke here. From broke, you could just go get some wrapping paper at the dollar store because the back of it has little 1 inch square grid. You roll that bitch out. You throw a piece of if you got some like piece of acrylic or just a big plastic sheet that'll weigh it all down. Throw that on top of it, and then you can, if it's dry erase compatible, you can just use dry erase markers. You can make your own terrain and plop it down on there if you want. That's completely up to you. And there are tons of channels out there, Black Magic Craft, and many others that will teach you how to make your own terrain. If you don't want to do that, just dry erase markers and do your thing. I did one similar with my 4 Against Darkness game, which let me just pull that up real quick. I'll show you a picture because I know they're in there, and it shouldn't take me long to find those at all. But here we go. And this is about what it would look like if you were to do a dry erase battle mat. This is coming up. So you would actually be spending a little more on something like this, but it's really not that expensive, I don't think, just personally. But if you're using miniatures and a dry erase battle mat, this is pretty much what it'll look like, just among other things. And this is what the entire map looked like when I got done with it. That was the entrance. So, yes, you can actually do something like this. If you just wanted to go permanent marker because you're going to roll it up and throw it away, that's fine. Do the dollar store thing with it. I do like this just a touch more. That's just me. It kind of captures that old school feel. You can use this piece right here. That's actually a little that's a token. So I did have a stack of tokens to use because I was using it as a placeholder. They weren't actually facing an abomination; they were facing something else. If you read the story, you'll know. But there's tons of little stuff like this going on throughout the game. So
yet again, the artisanal nature of the hobby. There was a day I was running tabletop, could not find my minis because I'd been cleaning, so things had been moved. So it's like, fuck it. So I literally reach over and I pick up this big bag of loot I just got from somebody's house sale, right? And it's all Mage Knight Games superhero minis. And I'm like, okay, you're Batman, you're Saber Tooth, you're Wolverine, you're Rogue, go. And it's like, but these aren't scale. Doesn't matter.
Fuck it. Yeah.
These are superheroes. It's like, use your imagination. They're the minis I've got, and I don't have enough. I don't have enough tools to represent these orcs properly.
All right, so here's another route you can go. And this is for your physical tabletop. If you want to use something rather than just do theater of the mind and just use like a printed out map or something like that, this old Skull Candy headphones bag that I have, inside of it, you can go to the dollar store and get these. It's literally 2 little Jenga towers. You can use these to map out your dungeon. In these 2 little bags right here that like this little bag right here, I don't know where I got this. This little bag right here has the hero tiles. This one has all the monster tokens. This is like those little glass beads for the bottom of a fish tank that you'll find at the dollar store. I mean, that's it. That's all they are. Just little, pearlescent glass beads. You can use those. I mean, if you really want, use little He-Man figures. I mean, I took a Skeletor and kind of kit bashed it a little bit if I could find it.
I mean, my mom still got me the best gamer swag ever.
Yeah.
Y'all
saw it in one of the pictures. I used this as a small dragon.
Well, I mean, sure.
Come on. It just.
But
you're looking for representation at the table. That's one thing. What the virtual tabletop does is it basically puts that on your screen. So with Roll20, it's very centralized. They can just wipe your fucking game right off. Same with D&D Beyond. They can wipe your fucking game completely out. And all they got to do is just lock you out. They don't even have to wipe your stuff off. They can just lock you out. And it's completely up to them. Foundry, on the other hand. Foundry, you pay a one-time fee of $50, and then you can buy asset packs and just deck that sumbitch out however you want. Tabletop, I'm not exactly sure how that works yet, but I'm talking with them, and we'll see how that works. I mean, I do kind of have Foundry, but I haven't purchased it. I haven't done anything with it. I was kind of hoping to use it for my hostile games, but I mean, with one-page rules, I may not have to. I might be able to get some of those ships printed up and then use those instead of doing faster than light or whatever.
Well, then you also get the problem of assets. The best virtual tabletop or virtual assistants are system agnostic.
Yeah.
Right? And that's because you're going to have to come up with your own stuff anyway, so the least they can do is not bias the weighting. Right?
Yep.
We assumed that the D&D whatever is going to be favoring whatever current edition of D&D they want to push is.
That's it. Yep.
Roll20, while it's not against urban fantasy, right? When you go into the internet and you look for tools, if I say I want to find fantasy art to make tokens and stuff, I'm falling all over myself. Yeah. If I say sci-fi, it's a little more difficult to find a specific flavor of sci-fi, but you can do it. If I say I want urban contemporary vampires for a horror game, because I'm running VTR, right? I'm either putting aside an afternoon, because it's going to be a trip and a half. I'm expanding out really widely what I can get away with. Or it's like, yeah, we're just going to do theater of the mind because the art and the assets aren't there. They don't provide things like modern rooftop, modern office, because I don't know, those aren't popular. Those don't have enough visual dynamism to really grab somebody. And even though sometimes you're like, look, I'm going to have a gunfight in a basic human apartment, and I need a house with like couches and chairs and shit. You know?
But the main thing is you can kind of go from, I mean, like I said, if the only thing that you really have to buy anymore these days, and going with this, the only thing that you really need to buy anymore, just a set of this. This is really it. So many D&D clones are free online. They're free PDFs. All you got to do is just search those things.
Hey,
and you'll find them. Cal, what's going on?
In
But you will find them, and there are also plenty of sci-fi. There's plenty of just about any genre. If you're willing to do just a little bit of digging, the only thing you need is a set of dice,
and
and
if you
most times you can cannibalize it from another game.
and if you must, like if you have dice, but you just want something, but you don't have enough for a table thing, because it happens, right? These are the deep dark secrets. If there are baby newbies watching this in the future, hear my words from across time and space. Raid the back to school aisle. Raid your office supply store. Raid if you're like collecting minis and you don't have anywhere to put them because you're brand new. Raid your hardware store.
Yep.
These are the meccas we used to go to back in the day. There is absolutely nothing saying that you can't just go buy a peachy or a loose leaf stack of hex grid notebook paper for math and do all your maps there. In fact, I find if you're doing hand drawn maps, it's often better, like for your GM notes, right? And there's no reason you players can't use it to map as they go as well. It's not a crime. They're not going to send the gamer police after you. You're not going to get black bagged and put into an unnamed facility where they put gamers for wrong thing.
Yeah.
That's the good stuff, guys.
I
On
mean,
a budget.
yeah, on a gaming on a budget, especially with tabletop role playing games, is so easy to do. It's accessible, and you can have hours of fun. And on top of that, it'll teach you how to make up your own shit. And I'll tell you this right now: you want to play D&D in arcade mode, you don't have a lot of time to read 200 pages, because guess what? The basic rules of D&D, 200 damn pages, and that's rules, that's spells, that's monsters, that's everything, and you don't get any art whatsoever. Okay, you want to do D&D in arcade mode? Just go get Crimson Dragon Slayer D20. It's free. You have what was it, like 17 to 20 pages of rules
Or
at
drop
most.
or drop $5 and get Horde Wars.
Or drop $5 and get Horde Wars. At least that way you will have all the stuff. Like, granted, basic D&D rules from Wizards is free. You can play D&D for free. $5 Horde Wars, you get a fully playable game right there.
You mean until they take it away and they make it the demo version, the fee to play digital?
Yeah.
Because you know that's coming. You know what's coming is D&D Basic in the digital format, and then if you want real D&D, you pay the subscription model to get access to the digital environment, which will still be curated and will still give people the wrong math. Just wait, it's coming. We live in the nightmare time.
I would say personally, dump D&D Beyond. That's just my personal advice. Yeah, whatever you decide to do is completely up to you. If you're going to publish something to Drive Through RPG, that's fine. I would say don't accept an exclusivity deal, because there are those like me. It's not that we won't buy your game because it's not good. It's we don't want to give Roll20 any money. But if you sell it directly, or you sell it through Giant Slayer or Lulu, or and you add all these other places, people like me will probably buy your game if it's good. Yeah, we'll probably buy it. I mean, Bhakashal's one of them. We'll buy it. We just won't buy it through Drive Through RPG. That's all.
A matter of point. This doesn't sound like it's related, but it absolutely is. I don't buy from Blizzard anymore. Now, I was a Blizzard fanboy going all the way back to Orcs vs. Men, and I played Blackthorn and Lost Vikings and Rock and Roll Racing. Okay? I love some Blizzard content. I am a huge Diablo fan. Why don't I give Blizzard my money anymore? Because Blizzard doesn't care enough about my custom as a paying customer to protect my information from Chinese gold sellers. I got fed up with having my information stolen repeatedly. And people are like, well, Joe, just buy the number protection. I'm like, I'm tried. Their market, their online store is a separate infrastructure that is also subject to theft and manipulation, it's not worth it. If they don't care about my money, I'll take my money somewhere else.
Yeah, well,
right? But the reason I bring this up, a friend of mine came to me a year ago. I was like, Joe, you got to come play World of Warcraft. I'm like, no, I don't support Blizzard. And they're like, I found a private server. And I'm like, okay. And they outlined to me what was great about it, and I went and I checked it out. It is pretty cool, and I do play on it sometimes. But the idea is that I'm not giving money to Blizzard because a group of fans who liked World of Warcraft the way it was before they started doing the retro servers, right? They made a copy of the game, they put it up, and then they started altering it. And there's this dedicated staff of weirdos that are making a better version of WoW than WoW off of WoW that you can play 100% free. And it's like, oh yeah, I'll play that all day, but Blizzard's not getting my money.
Well, I gotta point out here's what's going on. Here's the problem that we have today. For 3 years, tons of businesses out. Well, let's just say a select few major corporations, major chains, have had captive audiences. Ever since 2020, a lot of them have had captive audiences. They've had windfall after windfall, year over year growth, almost exponential growth. And now that the lockdowns have been lifted and everybody has options that have reopened to them, if they're lucky, some of those small businesses made pivots. They were able to reopen their doors again. Some restaurants are reopened. Many of those businesses have been destroyed. So now we have more options than we did in March of 2020, but now we have fewer than what we've ever had. But now that all these other options are open, those other options that have reopened have catered, they're catering specifically to people, while these other businesses thought that gravy train was just going to last. And now they're panicking because they're not experiencing that year over year growth anymore. The business model is failing because they've been getting away with, putting more and more and more on their staff and just weighing them down to breaking points. Now there's like 2 jobs for every person looking for one. And they're like, you know what? I don't have to keep putting up with this. And they're leaving those jobs. They're quitting and hiring into new ones every couple of years because their pay goes up when they do. Now those people are starting to panic, and you can tell which ones benefited the most because now they're doing every fucking thing they can to lock you as a customer in. They're still abusing their staff. They haven't gotten it in here yet that they cannot do that. And one such case I saw in the YouTube shorts this morning was this contractor who was like, people are a little puzzled as to why my rates are so high, but my rates are high because I can afford better equipment. I pay for uniforms. I pay for benefits. The only things that my employees need to bring are socks and underwear. That's it. I take care of everything else. My employees don't have to contribute. We just pay for them. We do right by our employees, and that also takes care of recruiting. I don't have to recruit. When they hear they're getting paid better and they're getting better benefits, they come over to me. All I got to do is hire. So maybe treat your employees a little better, and this, you won't have the same problems I'm having. Just a thought. That's a person who's actually doing business, right. But again, that is a small business. This is not a major corporation we're dealing with. The major corporations are just seeing the year over year kind of disappear, and now they're panicking, and they're blaming everyone but themselves.
Well, what we're wrestling with is generational myopia, and I can actually say it's generational. And I have to use this example. So, Star Trek had a very good life under Paramount Viacom. Right?
Yep.
Viacom went belly up, Paramount bought it out, and it was under the oversight of this guy named Les Moonves, who was not a Star Trek fan, because he had seen original series, and his grand opinion of what was at the time in the 60s and 70s the most expensive show on television was it looks so cheap. It's like, well, yeah, it's from the 60s, genius. You own this property in the 90s, and you're saying it looked cheap 30 years ago. Good job, right? The thing is that under Paramount stewardship, when they started doing the newest versions of Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Star Trek Lower Decks, they were like, and we have this captive audience, we're going to put out product and they'll buy it because these mouth-sucking idiots buy everything, right? And they flooded a cottage industry that they didn't understand because they think that the way it works is they tell you what to buy and you buy it, right? Yep. And the thing is that no, the cottage industry was licensing to smaller companies that do things like make phasers for a living, right? And then people buy what they like, open market, free market capitalism at the small scale. And really, the goose that lays the golden egg. All you had to do was do good television. The cottage industry would take care of itself, right?
Pretty much.
And what they're finding is all this new stuff nobody wants. Nobody wants what Paramount's making. Nobody wants the new stuff that Star Wars is making. You might get somebody to buy Ashoka because they liked Clone Wars, but nobody's buying Rose Tico dolls, let me tell you, right? And it's killing the cottage industry. The licensees are like, I'm not making that. You can't make me make that. But why not? It's like, because it won't move. That's product that you're asking me to take the hit for that will never move, right?
Yep.
And all they had to do was make the shit you like. We then apply that to tabletop gaming, and it's the same thing. Yeah, they had captive audience for their YouTube digital platform for 2 or 3 years, right? But the purpose of the people making game books is make good books, not sell me swag, not sell me a lifestyle, not reinterpret to create a digital platform of the most banal fucking game imaginable to sell me Mercer Core. That's not what I want. And you're literally killing the goose to get more eggs out of it. I'm going elsewhere. The cancel fires are lit. Gondor calls for aid. I'm going somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, like even with full games being free, like Basic Fantasy, White Box F Mag, Delving Deeper, for Golden Glory, Osric, with those games being free, Crimson Dragon Slayer D20, those games being free, I mean, what more could you want? And here's the thing: you could actually still pick. I think White Box F Mag is still like it's less than $5. Last I checked.
I mean, with that in mind, I want to thank Transverse for being garbage people, because you've made the basic expert angry enough that he's going to make his own version of White Box, and I really, really want him to call it Basic.
But
I want that.
Fantastic Medieval Dungeons or whatever the fuck it's called. Okay, if you're going to shit all over if you're just going to stand on the shoulders of giants or squat on the shoulders of giants, just don't make the fucking game.
It was head spinning. I was both awed and disgusted, because there I am, and I'm shown this thing. I'm like, oh, this looks really cool. This looks really cool. It's flavorsome. Wow. And then like 4 hours later, everybody's like, Joe, did you see this page? I'm like, what? And then I look at the page and I can't read it. It's too bright. It's too light. So I have to go and I have to dig it up. And then once I have a full size, I'm like, oh. And it's like, yeah, you've just lost a customer. Good job. I'm not buying your book, and I'm going to tell other people not to buy your book.
I was never, there was no way in hell I was ever buying that book. I saw it. Let me just put it this way. I'm not buying the book first because I have enough medieval fantasy settings that I can just fine tune any game I want. I've got enough.
I mean,
I'm calling it where it is. Nothing personal. It's just my library has a limited amount of space. I've got enough D&D and D&D clones to last me
I mean,
forever.
if I did a fantasy medieval game, I would hope you would buy it. Wolfgar, please.
Okay, let me put it to you this way. If you have a medieval fantasy game,
yeah,
it has to have something to make it unique. It cannot be just another D&D clone. Wasted Lands was the exception because it's not a D&D clone. This one has a certain type of lore behind it. It ties in well to Night Shift. All you really need are 2 books for Night Shift, and they're these books here, which I'm just going to go ahead and pull them down because it would take me less time. You just need these 2 books right here. You've got the whole game. This is the Night Shift Core and the Night Companion. These are the only 2 books you really need.
We're
Wasted Lands. There's a class in here that can take your character from Wasted Lands. Key caveat at my table, they have to survive the campaign. Once they survive the campaign and they become a god, you take the Immortal class from this book and you can bring it into your Night Shift game. Now you've got that Immortal, that sort of Highlander-esque person who is part of your investigative team if you're doing investigative stuff, who just ruins mythology for everybody. So there you go.
I mean, we're goofing around, but I do in fact have the key words to draw your interest, Wolfgar. If I was gonna make a medieval fantasy, if I was gonna do it, if I was gonna enter the marketplace, the key words are the following: 2nd edition. So it's not a retro clone of White Box. It's not Axe. It's 2nd edition flavored. Historical, Viking, role playing. So it's historically based and realistic. Authentic, pagan mysticism. Underline authentic pagan mysticism. So It has runes. It has spells. It has concepts.
Yep,
but it's how they're actually done historically, not just hand wavy.
Hold on. Because that's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
Because I was actually looking at Mifrog going, I could do this way better.
Right.
Now, I was going to do a BX version because basic and expert rules are so simple. They're easy as pie to get into. Anybody can play those from 9-year-olds on up. And I was going to do authentic. I was going to do it historical. Troll Lord Games already beat us to the punch on that one. Because with Castles and Crusades, they have Codex Nordica and Codex Germania. And when I saw them, I happened upon them by accident because I was doing some research. I happened on them by accident, and I saw that and I went, "Oh fuck! I think they might have beaten me to the punch." So I hold on.
Okay.
I looked at them. Well, I bought them just so I could look at them. I wasn't even mad. I was totally fine with it. I was like, "That's one project off my fucking plate." Okay, Brian Young does an amazing amount of research into Nordic and Germanic religions, mythology, and society. They're all reflected in those 2 books. Then there's Codex Keltarum, Codex Egyptium, Codex Classicum, Codex Sonorum, Codex Slavorum. Those codices are excellent. They've already beaten me to the punch. And quite frankly, I think they've already beaten another creator to the punch on certain things.
See, this is why we're glad I don't have money, because I'm an asshole.
So while I love 2nd edition, and I do, because that was the one I started on, playing official D&D here.
Yeah.
While I do love 2nd edition, I've got like For Golden Glory, which I mean we could do something based on that.
Yeah.
And that would work, because let's face it, those 2nd edition books, they're getting hard as hell to find, and even if I were to purchase them, they're going to cost me roughly just under what a 5th edition book would cost me. Unless I just get the reprints, which I have. My question is, what is going to set it apart from all that?
Well, see, that's why I say the issue is we're glad I don't have money because I'm an asshole. Because what I would do is I would wait around to your birthday or Christmas, right? And a package would arrive because yay, gifts. And it would be and I'd give you two things. I'd give you a box of books, and you'd be like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this? And then the other gift would be a bookcase, so you have someplace to put it. And you're like, you motherfucker. Because
Yeah,
I know you don't have any bookcase space either.
Yeah, well, I don't have any space for any more bookcases. That's kind of the
Right.
issue.
Right, but that's the thing is, I would absolutely send you a bookcase and books and be like, "Thank you for supporting my game." And it's like, you jerk, I don't have room for
Son of a
this.
Yeah.
But you'd love it.
I
You'd love it.
I would. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say is like at this point with medieval fantasy, rehashing the same old shit over and over again. I think I'm at the point where when John said what he did about old school, the OSR,
Yeah.
I'm slowly coming around to having to agree with him because he not only did he state his point, he demonstrated it. And now he's got something empirical to back it up. And I have to agree with him. At first I agree with him in part. Now I have to agree with him in whole because the OSR, yes, 100%. The whole purpose of it was to get those old rule sets into the hands of people who couldn't afford those books because those collector, the secondary market was like prohibitively expensive. I know. I looked back in the day. Now, not so much. But, still, it's cheaper for me to go and buy like Delving Deeper for like, what is it, like $15 for that one book? Like $15. I'll buy Delving Deeper. And now I've got a good coherent set of old school original D&D rules than it would for me to actually find the damn white box and go from there.
But by the way, to answer the implicit question, what would my thing do that would be different? The thing that I have not found in my Viking flavored content, even though I love me my Viking flavored content, is thanks to Skyrim, I would say, but probably other films and the like as well. It's not quite as bad as tree hugging magical Indian, but there's a propensity, as you know, for the sanitized Elizabethan Viking, right? Where it's very like, what ho, noble adventurer, I am a Viking. And it's like that's not a Viking. I would emphasize the cosmicism and the really gritty, down to earth, almost sanguinary nature. I'm in a game of Amber Diceless, for instance. Okay, and we're dealing with some cosmic weirdness. And I had a conversation with the DM, and it's like, look, I have a solution for this problem, but I want to put it in my back pocket. And it's like, hey, what's your solution? It's like, I'm going to go to this location, I'm going to find this cosmic entity, and I'm going to cannibalize it. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to eat it because I'm a shapeshifter and I can consume it. And then if I can successfully control the power, I can incarnate as it. And he's like, you don't have to do that. I'm like, but it would work, wouldn't it? It's like, maybe, but why would that be your thought process? And it's like, because I'm a barbarian and I'm a savage and I'm not like the rest of these people. And really, if I can just eat the dragon, I'll win. It's like, okay. I find that many a fantasy role-playing game forgets that in a certain context, your Dark Ages was perhaps before the 1400s, before Henry V, and that people were kind of grimy and tended to use superstition and mystery rather than intelligence and humanism. For whatever reason, players are like, I don't want to get really deep in the muck. I don't mean mudcore. I mean like you go to your priest and you're like, priest, what must I do? And it's like, you must get 3 eggs. and you must find a snake. And you must drink the snake venom and vomit onto the eggs, and then you will know the truth.
Well, what I'm trying to point out is like,
Sure.
okay, with fantasy systems,
Oh,
in
I'm aware
particular,
of the practicals. I was just
right?
commenting on the what
But
would you do that's different.
here's something that's different. Okay,
Yeah.
This is a supplement, but this is different. If what I'm going to if the author of this would do their own system with this, yeah, I would probably buy it again. But Vic's Modern Necessities, this is for old school essentials. This takes your game and sets it in like whatever world you've created, it sets it in the modern day with modern weapons, modern equipment, stuff like that. Magic still exists.
Oh,
So there's something different. This is something I would buy. But what I'm really looking for is stuff from like other genres. 10 Candles is a great example. That does horror gaming, in my opinion, right. And I think every single fifth edition table needs to be at least attempting to play or attempt to bring that. I mean, the story gamers are going to fucking love it because, yeah, you're basically doing some story gaming and it's D6 dice pool. So those dice are easy as hell to come by. Granted, you'll need some that are like different colors, but I mean, go cannibalize your fucking board games. Here's one that I think that when I saw this, I was like, yeah, this is one I'll buy. The Outer Presence. This is another venture book. Why did I buy this one? Because this one does Call of Cthulhu in the 1970s. So now I don't have to buy anything else from Chaosium. I've got everything I want or need from them. I don't need any more supplements for them. Now that this book, I can tell you, having read it in one sitting, it is still very venture, very Rule Zero done right, and it's still going to satisfy that need to play COC or whatever. But Wretched Darkness will satisfy that cult itch. Wasted Night Shift will satisfy the World of Darkness itch for me. Even though I have these games I'm talking about, I have Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. I have 2nd edition too, and I also have what else? Alien from Free League, and I also have Hostile, which I'm gonna. The difference is there. Alien specifically covers the lore from that movie, and they have all the stuff that they've licensed. Paul Elliott worked on it. Hostile has its own thing that's very similar, but it's not the same. Plus, you can run multiple tables. Whatever happens on Earth in Zaibatsu or the Earth supplement that he just released is going to affect what you do at if you're running 2 or 3 tables here. One table is the Earth setting, and one's a Zaibatsu setting, whatever. And then you've got 2 other tables that are 2 other crews from 2 other companies. Now, what happens at that Earth table is going to affect the other 2 tables. That's the biggest difference. Hyperborea, I love that. For anyone wanting to, looking forward to ACKS 2, go do it. I fully support that. That's really cool. That's really great. I'm probably not going to be getting on board because honestly, I have all the 1st edition AD&D shit that I need. Again, it's nothing personal. I don't think it's a bad game. I think it's probably a good game. This many people can't be wrong. It's just I don't really need it. That's the key component there.
So Wolfgar, we're coming up on time. We're a little over, but who cares?
A little bit over.
But I have something cozy to wrap up on, something nice and warm because you mentioned the Master of Clogs. So Victor a couple of days ago posited the following: 4 movies that represent the types of campaigns I run. They're all Arnold movies, and he said he presented Conan the Barbarian,
Right.
Commando, Red Heat, and End of Days. Right.
Okay.
So I responded. I said, here are the 4 types of campaigns I run. For some reason, I think we get along, right? Because I said Predator, The Running Man, Conan the Barbarian, and Total Recall. So using only Arnold films, Wolfgar, what are the 4 types of campaigns you run?
Okay, well, I'm going to go with Conan the Destroyer
Okay.
because that's a good D&D party movie.
Well, here's the thing.
Yep.
I actually also prefer certain parts of Destroyer. I just have to support Barbarian because it's closer to a Howard version than Destroyer, which is more
I'm
Marvel.
not talking about Howard version. I'm talking about the party.
You're talking about the D&D party, yeah.
Right. Predator again because of the party.
Yeah.
Now, as far as plot devices and stuff like that goes, I don't know that End of Days was all that great. I've seen it.
I mean,
it's okay. It plays on the Y2K shit there, and it did what it could. I just think it was kind of a waste of Arnold, personally.
I mean, that's Victor's preference. I don't mind End of Days, but it's not a game I would consider the Chronicle I run.
Let's see what other Kindergarten Cop. There's a reason I'm saying Kindergarten Cop. You do have the big bad evil guy that we perceive in that movie as being Mr. Crisp there, played by Richard Tyson.
Yeah.
It's not actually him. It's his mother.
Yeah.
His mother is the secret power pulling all the fucking strings. And on top of that, there's enough like divergent humor that kind of distracts from just how fucking evil these two people are. Because you see his struggle. His struggle is trying to deal with these children, most of whom are going to be NPCs. But there's like one child in particular. That's his MacGuffin there. So Kindergarten Cop, I think, makes a good elements of it make for a good D&D game. And then the final one I'm going to go with is going to be Jingle All the Way.
just because of the sheer ridiculousness?
The absolute ridiculousness of that, yeah, and not only that, but he is up against another person for the same MacGuffin.
See, I actually think on the subject of Kindergarten Cop that it does have a quintessentially perfect D&D scene, but it's not the D&D scene most people would think.
Right.
Right? Because everyone's always talking about murder hobos. We're always talking about how, like, authority doesn't apply to your character because you're so physically powerful, right? Arnold encounters the kid that is being abused by his old man. Arnold walks up to the dude that's the dude,
fuck out of him,
punches him, just fucking cold cocks him, and says, "You hurt that kid, I'll fucking end you." And he gets brought into the principal's office, and we all think that sounds ridiculous, but it's like, no, it's what authority has to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the principal does all the required bitching, all of the you can't do that, right? And then when all is said and done, says, "By the way, how was it to punch that son of a bitch?" And it's like, yes, that is exactly what happens at the table. After the sheriff or the lord or the king's man has told you you're not allowed to burn down stores in town.
After he's publicly chastised you
right, it's
for
like,
the bar brawl you've been in.
Right.
Then he's going to take you inside and go, thank fuck it was you guys, because geez, we have had all kinds of trouble running these guys out.
Right.
And you guys just did us a huge favor. I'm sorry I had to do that, but by the law I have to. But how did it feel? Damn, our hands were fucking tied, dude. We couldn't get rid of that asshole. And you did it for us. Thank you so much. That was great.
Because I did that in a D&D game. Which is funny. Some players were playing bards, traveling the world, and they got to town, and you had to go through customs because they got off the train, right? And they're like, "Oh, I don't want to wait in line." So one of them used thaumaturgy to spook the crowd, so the crowd all fled, and they got their ticket number, and they moved to the front, and they're waiting to meet with the secretary when the secretaries come back, right? And a kid in a red uniform enters the building with a soapbox, puts the soapbox down, stands on the soapbox, opens a grate, pulls out what look like some clear crystal gems, and then leaves. And they're like, huh, that was weird,
Yeah.
right? And then they hear from outside, "This is the guard. Please exit with your hands up and your weapons thrown down." And they're like, "Oh, the cops." And they get arrested. And the worst part is that when they're taken into the interrogation booth by the cops, and they meet with the captain of the captain of the guard's like, "Look, we know what you did. We have you on Gem of True Seeing. We have the film. We know exactly what went down. But look, you're newbies, you kids. I'm willing to overlook it. Just promise me you won't do it again."
Yeah, and it's just those little elements that you don't think. I would never in a million years pick Junior. I would probably pick Twins as one of them, but I mean we're only picking
Yeah.
4. But Twins would be a good one because hey,
Twins would be great.
Yeah, Twins would be fucking awesome because
Well,
I mean, how ridiculous is it that you got a twin who's like this little short.
I mean,
squatty-
I
Basically,
kind of
Arnold's the human fighter and Danny DeVito is the dwarf. Let's just
Danny DeVito is the rogue.
yeah, he's the dwarf.
The thing is that I almost misled you because it was not actually a requirement to only pick Arnold movies from the thread. So some people responded with their own films, but like no, I think the challenge of trying to pick from his very large repository of films, specifically Arnold films, and be thematically appropriate, it fits. It's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to go with if we're just going to go with movies,
yeah,
just give me the Expendables movies.
Right. And that's the thing
mean,
is somebody did John Woo, and I was like,
I don't know. The Replacement Killers was a pretty fire movie.
The films in question, since we're talking about it, Hard Boiled with Chow Yun Fat, The Killer, A Better Tomorrow, and Hard Target.
Oh, Hard Target. That dude, I went back and watched that movie from start to finish. Oh
well,
man.
I'm not going to say who because I don't want to call somebody out, but the other response of type was the animated Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that was a good one.
DreamWorks Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas, which I've not seen, but it looks like cancer. Spirited Away. And Underworld: Rise of the Werewolves.
The Lichen, yeah.
No! Lichen grows on trees, motherfucker!
That's the title. Like it
know.
or not.
Like
it or not.
I know.
Lichen or not. It's still in the title. But yeah, like I'll just be straight up with you. Like there are plenty of movies that inspire games.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter which. I think like for even for Cyberpunk, Johnny Mnemonic would be a perfectly good movie to use as inspiration for a Cyberpunk game. The problem is you've got to update it a bit. This this 16 gigabyte upload. He uploaded 32 gigs. That's nowhere near how it would work, but it's an interesting premise. If you could suspend your disbelief for that much, that's a good one. But again,
my opinion is you have to emphasize emulation, not replication. Right?
Well, look, just real quick, and then we'll get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about this for just a second. There are levels of suspension of disbelief that I, as a GM, can take, and for the Johnny Mnemonic thing to have a mnemonic courier in your Cyberpunk game, I think is perfectly valid.
Sure.
If you want to just kind of come up with an arbitrary number, like he can upload 2 terabytes of info into his head. Oh my gosh, they put in 3.5. Now he's got synaptic seepage. It's going to kill him. He's on a countdown timer. Okay. Even though I know technically that shit would never happen. Once it hit 2 terabytes, it would be like, well, we're out of room. We can't upload anymore. The file can't be uploaded. Even though I know that for the purpose of the game, I could do that. For now, on the opposite end of that, Spelljammer. spaceships in space. No, absolutely not. Sorry, you're not gonna convince me that these. I know what the concept is. I'm familiar. I have Spelljammer for second edition. Even then, as cool as I thought it would be, when I started looking into it, I was like, no, I can't do this one. It's not in my realm of possibility here. With Cyberpunk, the mobile chair, I would have done it differently, but again, the one that Sarah Thompson made fits because it is style over substance. And I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, okay. I got that. That fits. That I don't need a suspension of disbelief for that. For the combat wheelchair in D&D, again, it's like Spelljammer. I just can't suspend my disbelief long enough that if I were to run that at my table, nobody would like it.
What I'm getting at is, if you run Cyberpunk and you like Blade Runner, that's fine. You want to be a Blade Runner, you want to be in the universe of Blade Runner, you want to be chasing bots, go with it. Right? But don't do the plot, characters, and structure from Blade Runner. Don't do Roy Batty. You can't do better than Rutger Hauer. You're not that good. Right? If you like Alien, fine. You can get real close to replicating Alien 1 in the Alien RPG. But don't do the Nostromo. Don't do Ripley. You can't do better than perfection. You know? And in fact, oddly enough, Alien Isolation, the video game, is proof of that. Sevastopol is basically a new Nostromo. And it's Ripley's daughter, but it's basically the same story. And the structures are very similar, and yet it's very different. There's other things going on. There's other characters. There's other politics. It digs into the world setting a lot. And it's like, yeah, that's where your bread and butter is.
Well, I mean, you could do the same thing with Hostile, but here's the difference with the Free League Alien games. With anything Free League does, Mort Borg aside, with anything like they get an intellectual property that's licensed, like Alien, they do it really well.
Yeah,
they get Blade Runner, they do it really well. If I'm going to play Blade Runner, I'm going to go to that. If I want to play Alien at a table full of brand new role players, probably not going to pick Hostile right away. Probably going to do Alien. Now, once they're like, okay, I think we've kind of run our course here on Alien. Is there anything else we could do? Yeah, we could do Hostile. Now we have a more open world. Now we could do Cyberpunk. Now we could do, we have a wider range of shit we could do. Same with, hey, I want to play Star Wars. Well, I've got White Star. We can still do Star Wars. We don't have to refer to the Force as the way. We don't have to refer to the Space Knight, or we don't have to refer to the Jedi as the Space Knight. We can still use that. We don't have, and there's the thing. I don't have to learn a new rule set.
And this is the crown. This is the topper. Because this is what the newbies got to learn. This is what we hope the young people watching this in the days and weeks and months and years and centuries to come get. If this is found in a time capsule in some far-flung future, please hear our words. You don't have to follow the example of specific creators, which means if I come to you and I say, okay, Raven, we're going to play White Star and it's going to be Star Wars, but you know what? I want to take that alien from Hostile, because we're going to do Predator on Coruscant and we're going to be space cops. You're down. Your brain is ready for all of these things because I'm taking that chocolate and that peanut butter and I'm slamming them together in new and interesting ways that haven't been done yet.
I mean, why not? I've done weirder. I mean, I have done.
There is weirder.
Yeah, I mean, like in that Vampire the Masquerade game, my human character who was a struggling rock musician, becomes a vampire. He goes into his clan as the Daughters of Cacophony, which is supposed to be, according to the book, all female.
Yep.
He's the first male member.
Yep.
It's not out of the realm of possibility. I wasn't looking for representation. I wasn't at the table protesting that. That just happened. And I was like, oh, cool. Okay, so my character got a little bit of a milestone there. Now I got to see what I could do with it. And he became just a touch villainous, because what he wanted to be this, internationally recognized rock star. But the Daughters of Cacophony are like, we've got to keep a low profile. He's like, what fucking good is this ability if I cannot use it?
Right.
So it did put him at odds with his clan. He started becoming famous. It started making them sweat. That's conflict that has to be resolved. It wasn't fighting. It was just conflict that needed to be resolved. This is the kind of thing that could happen at a tabletop, and it happened well before all this representation bullshit came up.
Look, there are members of your clan that are just unhappy with you, and there are members of your clan who get it, and the only ones you got to be worried about are the ones that are paying Bruja assassins to kill you.
Exactly. That's really it. But to kind of bring this back full circle, with anything, you can totally take elements from other movies. You could, if you wanted to take elements from the Iliad and the Odyssey, you could. If you wanted to take it from the war for the war against the Fomorians, you can. If you want to take it from Greek mythology, Norse mythology, Celtic, Chinese, Japanese, Shinto, you want to do that, you can. That's the great thing about tabletop role-playing games, is that they have such versatility. And if you want to just make it all up yourself, you can do what Dr. Slater did. Bhakashal, there you go. The first book is already out, the spell book, because it's plug and play into anything. Yes, you can even do it in basic. And there you go. I would say go ahead and get that book. That link is in the description below. We're looking at about 4 more books coming in the coming year and a half, I think you said it was.
Me? I didn't say it.
No, I think he mentioned it was going to be like a year and a half.
Something like, yeah.
So in the next year and a half, keep an eye out. They're available on Lulu. I went ahead and put the links in the description down below. Go ahead and get this book, because having gone through it in the last few days or so, it's been pretty amazing. A pretty amazing read. This is not your usual bill of fare. Plus, there are rules to where you get to use. You don't have to memorize it each and every time, which could be a little bit of a pain in the ass. Let's just face it. It was a pain in the ass playing a Magic user, but you can do that. And now you've got it. You can modify your game as you need to. And on top of that, the setting is coming very, very soon. So keep an eye out for that. We will be having him back on naturally.
I mean, our friend the damnedest bastard is backing Bhakashal.
Indeed.
So the council fires are lit.
Yeah,
Bhakashal is a powerful constituency among the barbarian tribes.
Indeed. I mean, if you wanted to plug this into your Wretched Bastards game, you probably could.
Oh yeah.
I mean, wouldn't be that hard. But anyway,
you can plug it into your Chult.
You can plug it into your Chult game, yeah. I mean, who's to say that they don't have this magic on Chult? Bhakashal could be another world, just a couple planets over adjacent from Chult. You never know.
I'll do you one fun. I was mentioning World of Warcraft, so we'll take a little bit of Warcraft, we'll take a little bit of Chult, a little bit of Bhakashal. So here you are, you're on Bhakashal, and you are summoned, for there is a dire threat. A portal has opened in the east, and strange, half-naked warriors are pouring out, screaming, "Chult!"
I mean, you're gonna have you're probably getting skeevers first, but
that's
the point.
But that's the thing. It's like you run up a Bhakashal game, you're getting raided by skeevers, and you just start again mixing and matching and playing with the Legos. It's gonna be great. Yeah. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I mean, fuck it. There's nothing written in blood or stone that says your table has to run a certain way. That's the big takeaway here. Look, we just had Dr. Slater on. Dr. Slater is slowly but surely giving us his world that ran at his table. You're about to see a whole hell of a lot of possibility. And I think if you're brand new to D&D and you've only played 5th edition so far, get this book. Just open, especially if you're a DM, open up your game a little more to some more possibility, and look at what's possible. Your table is not going to run the same as mine, and I don't insist that your table runs the same as mine.
I mean, that is my sorrow, and I suspect that is your sorrow as well, is you don't have to play the Sword Coast.
No.
You don't have to even be in the realms, but if you're going to be in the realms, at least be somewhere else.
If
You know.
you don't have to play in Ravenloft, you don't have to play in Mystara, but I really wish Mystara would get a little more love. And I mean love, not whatever the fuck WotC is doing by raping the rest of these realms. But I really, really would like to see it get a little more love, especially from fans. So check out Mr. Welch's channel too. But in the meantime, buy Bhakashal. You are not going to regret it, not one bit.
Bhakashal!
Yeah. So anyway, this is your boy Raven and Joe closing out with, we love you all. Take care of yourselves and each other. Always play what lights you up, and as always, play on.